Well, welcome everyone, and welcome to the regular council meeting of the municipality of Thames Centre, September 19th at 5 p.m. So no matter what the reason that everyone is here today, it's just nice to have everyone here today. It's really good to see these chambers filled again and to be used the way they were designed to be used. It's been a long time, I think almost 3 years now. So it's great, as I said, to see everybody. For anybody who doesn't regularly follow these meetings, I usually have a bit of an opening, and I'm going to start with that now. And then after that, I will call the meeting to order, and then I'll go through the process of the public meeting so everybody understands what we're doing tonight. So today is an auspicious day for many reasons. Some of you may have gotten up extra early this morning to watch the state funeral. Even if you only watched it for a short time, I think you would agree with me that it touched many emotions. For many people, those emotions may not be just the awe of the pageantry displayed and the pride of seeing our Mounties riding in front of the procession. Some people may be harboring bitter memories of losing loved ones over the last 3 years. Funerals and celebrations of life were minimized, put on hold, and most sadly, people were not allowed to be at their loved one's bedside during their passing. Watching the funeral today brought many of those emotions to the surface. However we are affected and whatever our opinions are, the fact that Her Majesty was a constant presence for 70 years is an amazing accomplishment of public service. May she rest in peace. This is the last meeting in September, and I would like to acknowledge another day of mourning. On September 30th, we'll be honoring the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. It marks a day of respect for the children who never returned home and to the survivors and their families for their communities. Reconciliation is a perpetual journey, and municipalities should be mindful of the 9 calls to action that directly address these concerns. And in that spirit, I'll be starting with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Attawaddaron, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenapequot, peoples who have had a long-standing relationship to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames First Nation, and Munsee Delaware Nation. We acknowledge the historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous people endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. So now at 5:06, I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I'm going to advise the gallery of the public meeting process. So there's a large number of planning applications being dealt with tonight, and it was anticipated that these meetings may draw a larger attendance. But due to the option of hybrid participation and live streaming, we've all become accustomed to and now expected, it was decided that the meeting would continue to be held in the council chambers in order to offer these platforms. The agenda has been organized to deal with the application with the most registered participants first. Therefore, if you are here and would like to provide comments on a proposed subdivision application, we ask that you find seating inside the chambers. Looks like we've gotten that done. Many have submitted written comments that have been posted online with this evening's agenda, which will be considered when council makes a decision. Everyone in attendance this evening wishing to participate will be provided an opportunity to provide comments virtually or by stepping up to the podium one at a time and stating your name and address for our clerk during the public question period. To assist with the meeting process tonight, you may come up to the podium once, and then there's a 2-minute limit for any questions, comments, concerns. Once you've stated your question or comment, please return to your seat and their planner will provide a response. We request that you not only participate in speaking tonight if you have new additional information not addressed or presented. So what I mean by that is if we have people coming up and saying, this is my concern, and they've addressed that concern you have, skip that part and bring another concern forward that you may have. So we just don't have the same concern coming 40 times. I do have the 300 pages of correspondence that I've gone through of everybody's letters. So we do take this very seriously, and it's not that we don't want to listen to people. It's just that we don't want to be here either taking up your time till midnight as well. So if you are participating virtually, you'll be brought in from Zoom attendees section and given an opportunity to provide your information. It's then requested that you use the link to the YouTube broadcast that was attached in an email sent an hour before the meeting. In the event your questions have already been addressed, it's requested that you leave the Zoom meeting and view the meeting through the YouTube broadcast, as being in the attendees section is considered a request to speak. Anyone who has submitted written comments or registered to participate in tonight's meeting will be notified of the applicable decision. So again, the decision won't be tonight. This is just the beginning of the process, and it's to get information and to answer any questions anyone has. For anyone else who is in attendance and you wish to be notified, if you could please provide your name and address on the sheet located in the entrance, indicating application being requested. The County of Middlesex is the approval agency for plans of subdivision, and the municipality conducts a statutory public meeting required by the Planning Act for consideration of plans of subdivision and condominium. Planning staff are also available to answer any questions you may have during the normal office hours. So again, the purpose of this public meeting tonight is to obtain feedback from the public, and the Director of Planning and Development will provide a subsequent report evaluating the said applications with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. Any written feedback that has been received will be considered by council when making a decision. So the format for each public meeting is: first, we have an overview of the planning application. We have additional information. And then we have questions with the public, starting with the in-person first and finishing up with the virtual. Council may ask questions at that point, and then a decision, again, for this is not going to be coming in, I would say, probably 5 months to get all the information and everything forward. That's usually my experience anyway. So it'll be a long process, and tonight's the first step. So any additions to the agenda?
No addition.
Okay. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest, council? Hearing, seeing none. Any announcements? Okay, and I'm going to ask that council adjourn its regular meeting in order to hold the public meeting under the Planning Act. Moved by Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. Your arms are going to be tired by tonight because you're the only ones here. So starting with 5.1, applications for proposed plan of subdivision 39 TTC 2022 and zoning bylaw amendment Z1722, and address being 1598 Richmond Street, Dorchester. And I'm going to hand it over to you now, Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm going to provide a summary of my planning report, especially to assist with the members of the public that are in attendance. So the purpose of this report, it provides background information regarding the subject proposal. And I can confirm, Your Worship, that proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act, in that we circulated notice to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, and also to prescribed agencies under the legislation. We also went above and beyond in terms of having the notice posted on our website. In terms of the subject property, it's over 100 acres in size. It's located on the east and west sides of Richmond Street, on the south side of Marion Street, and north of the CN railway line, which bisects the village of Dorchester. The property is also adjacent to Linwood Drive, which is proposed to be extended to tie into the proposed subdivision. And also on the east side of the site, the property is adjacent to Eva Street and Ida Street, which are also to be proposed to be extended to tie into the subdivision. Municipal services are limited to potable water through the pipe municipal system. Considering there's no sanitary sewers in the area, we have individual septic systems in this part of the village. Under the official plan, the lands are designated residential. With two notable exceptions, we do have lands located at the southwest corner of Marion Street and Richmond Street, which are designated neighborhood commercial. And there's also two small wooded areas on the east side of the site, which are designated protection area. From a zoning standpoint, the subject lands are zoned future development FD, with the exception of those wooded areas, which are zoned environmental protection. In terms of the proposal itself, We have a proposed plan of subdivision that is to be subdivided in accordance with the following. So approximately 200 lots to support single detached dwellings, ranging in frontage from 15 meters to 16 meters. 8 blocks or parcels of land to support medium density residential development, including townhouse dwellings, as well as clustered single detached dwellings, totaling approximately 590 units. We've got a number of blocks for parkland and open space purposes, as well as stormwater management. Also a block necessary for a pumping station, along with 7 new streets proposed. And recognizing again that there's no municipal services in the form of sanitary sewers in this part of Dorchester, this will require front-end financing through the prepayment of development charges, where the developer is going to be required to provide the necessary financing. There are 6 studies or reports provided in support of the proposal. We have a planning justification report, conceptual stormwater management strategy, environmental impact, preliminary servicing, archaeological, and hydrogeological. Also, there's a rezoning or zoning bylaw amendment application that's also been submitted along with this draft plan of subdivision request. The developer seeking a site-specific residential first density R1 zone for single detached lots, also with reduced front yard, side yard, and rear yard setbacks, along with a slight increase in the height requirement, and along with also a slight increase in lot coverage. And the same applies to the site-specific residential third density R3 zone, which would allow for the proposed townhouse dwellings, along with the single detached dwellings or cluster housing or condos proposed. And that's also based on some reduced setbacks relative to front yard depth, a side yard, rear yard, and also an increase in coverage. We have an open space zone that would apply to the parkland, open space, and stormwater management areas. And the remainder of the site is to remain zoned environmental protection. In terms of agency comments received, Your Worship, in the circulation of this application, from the County of Engineer, he notes that although this development doesn't front onto a county road, a traffic impact study should be completed in order to determine the extent of any impacts on the county road system by the traffic generated by this development. From Canadian National Railway, they have submitted their standard response dealing with conditions, dealing with the need for confirmation of a setback requirement of at least 30 meters for any dwelling. Also, the need for the applicant to have a noise and vibration study undertaken. The need for chain link fencing along the mutual property line, at least 6 feet in height. A warning clause to be registered on title, warning any purchasers of the active railway line in the area. Moving right along, from Canada Post, they've acknowledged that the developer is going to be required to install community mailboxes. From Enbridge, necessary easements may be required for the provision of gas services. From our chief building official, a building permit will be required for the decommissioning or removal of any buildings or structures, including any septic system. Any potable well on site will also need to be decommissioned. And also, lastly, from our drainage superintendent, he's noted that a stormwater management plan will be required, will need to be reviewed and approved, as well as sufficient outlets to properly convey stormwater discharge away from the developed lands. In terms of public comments received, Your Worship, we've got over 100 written submissions along with a petition. Those submissions are all attached to my report. Subsequent to the release of the council agenda, we did receive one or two submissions. As I understand it, they have been forwarded to members of council. Ultimately, when I'm in a position to bring forward my evaluation report for council's consideration, it will include all submissions received. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that my report be received and that I provide a subsequent report evaluating the applications, taking into account all comments received from the public and agencies, with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. And now I have the second part. I'm looking for any additional information by the applicant or the agent, and I believe we have him here.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our proposal and to answer any questions of you or the public. We did have an opportunity to go through the public comments we received as part of the public process and on the website. So I'll be able to speak to those as well. Just to give a little bit of background on the evolution of this property. The application is premised on the policy framework that exists for the property. It is in the urban growth boundary of the Dorchester. It anticipates having full municipal services provided to the site for the ultimate development of the property. And there are various natural heritage areas that were subject to retention as part of our ES proposal. The application and the subdivision evolved with respect to larger single family homes on urban lots, not rural residential lots. And I think that is the difference with this application and maybe some of the abutting lands. We do recognize that there are some large homes and adjacent, either across the road or immediately adjacent to extensions of some of our roads. And we're happy to talk about that specifically if required. The idea behind having a multitude of multifamily blocks, or as referenced, medium density blocks. And one of the special provisions was to have single detached cluster homes is included in that R3 zone to allow for what we would refer to live in place or age in place opportunities with housing types. It also is in relation to affordability, which is a big issue in recent times and continues to be and will always continue to be, I think, as we move forward in the province of Ontario because of the restriction on some of the growth requirements in municipalities. So we anticipated trying to accommodate a number of housing forms within this subdivision, allowing people that currently live in this area or that start to live in this area to remain in this area as they age. And that's what we anticipate in some of these housing forms, whether they are entering into the housing market in, more of a 2 or 3 story townhouse or as a single detached retirement type of dwelling. So that was what we anticipated when we made our rezoning applications, and that's subject to those special provisions to enable that. Happy to speak to any of the specifics with regard to the background reports. We have undertaken the noise and vibration study. It is being finalized as we speak. So, and they are consistent with what CN is requesting. So that wasn't much of a surprise. The natural environment background reports were completed by MTE. We've done background reports on hydrogeology for the past 2 years. So we've done substantial inventory of both the natural heritage and the geological makeup of the project. To speak to the servicing, Stantec was the engineer for the preliminary reports, and the location of the stormwater management facility, the sizing of that, and the future infrastructure required for the pump station and sanitary outlets have all been conducted by professional engineers. So I'm here to answer any other questions you may have or anything specific you would like me to address. I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. So we're ready now for questions from the public. And I have a long list. So I'll just call your name, and if you're here, then you can come up to the microphone. There is instructions on how to use the microphone. There's a little button there that it will help you with that anyway. So let's get started. I'm looking to see if John Mass is here. Is John here? Okay. Albert Fountain. Oh, there he is.
Getting back to that thing, okay.
Oh, I'm
So Mark Bancroft's statement about this, with the sewer system. So my existing septic system has to come out and hook up to a sewer system. Is that what you're trying to tell me? So I got a working system. When I have to hook up to something that in the past doesn't work all that great.
Through you, your worship, ultimately, sir, that would be a decision from council.
Oh, okay.
I did not suggest that by any means in my presentation.
I thought you said something about the existing septic systems.
No, I mentioned that in the area, it is characteristics of the area to have individual septic systems, and that this development will require full municipal services, including water and sanitary sewer.
Okay, so that doesn't impact the residents at all then, who are on septic, is that correct? Or no?
Like I said before, your worship, that will ultimately be a decision of council.
Yeah.
Mr. Fountain, did you understand?
Yeah.
It's nothing. I think you have an existing home that's on a septic,
Correct,
and your concern is that you'll be forced to hook up.
correct.
That would be something that council down the road would eventually, but I think we're a long, long way from ever having to make that decision today, in my experience. And, you know, as in other regions, we can't force people to hook up. So, you know, there's no
Okay,
that there.
okay, and number two, in June, I received a letter from township saying the rules in question will be taken off the future for future development. 60 days later, we got things saying, no.
Do you want to explain that, Mr. Bancroft?
Sure. So through you, your worship, council passed a resolution at the last council meeting dealing with that matter, which was application for official plan amendment 03-22. And council decided to maintain the status quo and not change the settlement and area boundaries for Dorchester. So those settlement area boundaries are to remain as such for the next while. And like Mr. Stapleton mentioned, these lands are within the growth boundary and they are designated residential under the official plan.
Okay, well,
Thank you. And now Kevin Martin. Is Kevin Martin here? I'm gonna mangle this last name, but I'm gonna do my best. It's Janice Van Havergaby.
There, is that, okay. Okay, I'm just wondering if maybe another company or the government or something else should do a study on that, because I back up to that area, and what you're proposing is like putting a parkland, filling all that in. And right now it's a small wetland, and I've been there 24 years, and every year tons of nesting red-winged blackbirds come back. And I have frogs coming up from that area, snakes, some turtles. So you want to fill that in to make a parkland, but those animals, everything else don't survive in a parkland. And I'm just wondering on just one, whatever, documentation of this study, should not there be more?
I'm going to let Mark answer that, and then I'm going to provide a comment as well, Janice.
Yeah, thank you, your worship. And that's a very good question. With these types of technical studies, the environmental impact study, we rely on the expertise from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. They have the expertise on staff in dealing with evaluating them. And so we will be relying on their judgment, to ensure that, the proper analysis was undertaken and, there's appropriate mitigation measures and that sort of thing. So certainly we rely on a third-party review to make sure that it's an appropriate finding, based on the results of the study. So.
Mr. Stapleton?
Yeah, if I could just add, and I believe you're talking the west side of Richmond Street. Is that the area you're referring to? I'm sorry. Are you talking about the west side of Richmond Street?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I know it's delineated as parkland, but there's different types of parkland. We were looking at a passive recreational type of parkland, like you could walk through it and enjoy the natural setting. That's what we identified. We're not planning on filling the area at all.
So you would not fill in, right now it's like a marshland. Right now,
Yes,
so
no, it would
basically that
remain.
Stay.
It would remain, yes. Yeah. That's right. Well, we've done geotech on the site, so we know exactly the limits of it.
Because the condominiums or whatever would be built on the hill.
Yeah, there's some on the hill.
That's kind of down here.
That's right. And there's a limit of that we delineate. That's why you'll see the cul-de-sac kind of bend down. So we know where the soil is good and where it's not.
Because I know sometimes if you went now this time of year, there's really the birds have left and things like that. But I'm just wondering do they go year round and study this area every season to see exactly?
Yeah,
There's
a minimum of 3 seasons that you have to do, and one has to be spring.
I hope that answers your question, Janice. And I just want to say too, in the past, when council has been faced with difficult decisions, sometimes what we have done is had a peer review of the reports in front of us too, just to double check and do that sort of thing. So that's always a consideration in the future as well. Okay, thank you. And the next name I have is Jenny Grevers. It's always when you sit in the corner that you have to get up, isn't it? Whenever you're ready, Jenny.
Yeah, what I would like to know is how much the owner of the property and to the north has donated, gifted, whatever to this development. Anything?
I don't
Or a
understand.
donation to the Dorchester sewers? No?
I don't understand the question, your worship.
Okay, I'm just referring to a comment that Tom Heeman left on Facebook. Let me just find it. I had it word for word. I think you probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah, okay. And he said that the owner north of the in the north of the river had given $100,000 to the Dorchester sewer for future development, I believe. Maybe Tom wants to confirm what that meant. Okay,
Yeah.
and I would like to know when that money was paid to.
Thank you, your worship. You won't know because it doesn't pertain to this situation. That's a totally different matter. So there are people that are within the lands, and that is a separate gentleman and a separate individual that was pertaining to an item that was dealt on September 12th meeting of council.
Okay, so that didn't have to do with any of the lands that
That's
we're talking
correct.
about over here?
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
That's why we had the blank looks on our faces. Yeah, no problem, Jenny. Thank you. Jacob Damstra. Is Jacob here? There he is. Thank you.
I turned it off instead of on. Is it on now? The red light threw me off. I thought I was going to see green when I turned it on. Thank you. Your worship, Deputy Mayor Elliott, members of council, members of staff. My name is Jacob Damstra. I'm here with my wife, Teal Damstra-Zapanzik, and we're at 286 Claris Street, where we're raising our 4 sons. My written comments are at page 60 of the package, where we include a number of concerns as well as a limited planning analysis. And I won't repeat anything that we've said in the written comments, but I do feel that it's important to emphasize 4 points. There's one that I sort of have a question, and I'll leave it to Director Bancroft whether he wants to respond at the end or in the course of the comments. The first is, as you've heard and as you've seen, there are hundreds of submissions from neighbors with their concerns, dozens more who have indicated their objections or opposition in online and paper petitions, who didn't personally submit accounts but clearly have concerns. This is a substantial majority of the residents who are going to be directly affected by this proposed development. And I think it would be inaccurate and unfair to think of this or dismiss it as a NIMBY movement. This isn't just a not in my backyard concern. These are real and legitimate planning considerations grounded in the Planning Act, the official plan, the zoning bylaws that need to be considered carefully and addressed by the proponent and by staff and council. The second point comes back to a discussion earlier about agency comments. I didn't hear Director Bancroft mention comments, and I didn't see in the planning report any comments from Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. Perhaps I missed that and I apologize. And if I did, I can end there. But I think in light of the wetland features and the drainage features that are on this site, and what's been noted as very hydric soils and fast filling aquifers on this site in the MTE hydrogeology report that Mr. Stapleton referred to, it's imperative to obtain the report or the comments from Upper Thames and to defer, as Director Bancroft discussed, to their expertise in reviewing this. And again, Director Bancroft, I'm not sure if I missed that or if it's yet to come.
Through your worship, those comments have not been received. So that's why they weren't mentioned in the agency comments provided. So once those are available, ultimately in my evaluation report, that information will be forthcoming.
Thank you, Director Bancroft. The third point that I wanted to highlight, and a planning concern that's not specifically highlighted in Director Bancroft's summary of public concerns, is this issue of over-concentration. The Thames Centre official plan that was released in 2020 forecasts population growth from 14,630 in 2021 to 21,956 in 2046 for all of Thames Centre. So that's about 7,000 residents that are projected to increase over 25 years. Thames Centre's 2001 development charges background study averages 2.7 residents per housing unit. And so this proposed development amounts to about 2,200 additional residents on what is effectively about 80 acres of proposed developable area. So 1/3 of the projected growth for all of Thames Centre over 25 years is supposed to be wedged into 80 acres north of the Thames River without access to services, without access to amenities in an area that doesn't have public transportation. One has to question whether this can be considered good planning. In my view, it's a drastic over-concentration. We already have the Hawthorne development approved. We have the Boardwalk developments approved. We have the Acorn Valley on the other side of the Mill Pond and the thousands of new housing units that those developments will all add to the village of Dorchester. We also have Thorndale's expansion and growth in other areas in Thames Centre, which all amount to far more than the housing necessary to support the projected growth of 7,000 people. It's readily foreseeable that Thames Centre is outbuilding our actual housing needs, and that there is zero planning rationale for this small parcel north of the river to supply 1/3 of our projected housing needs. We can see the economy slowing. We can see the housing market cooling. We can see sales of homes in the neighborhood declining and slowing down. This development will reduce property values north of the river. It will leave unfilled lots and built houses that don't have residents moving into them because we don't need this many housing units. The final comment that I would highlight is building on this, where we're talking about creating housing for 2,200 new residents north of the CN tracks and north of the river, an almost 50% population increase from the current Dorchester population. with virtually all of our amenities and services on this side of the river. We have a single access point, a 2-lane bridge. And we're supposed to see this support this huge influx of residents in the area. There's no doubt that we're going to see an enormous increase in traffic and congestion, which will support what I say and what a number of our neighbors say is an unneeded and unwanted development, at least in its current configuration. I'll leave it for others to highlight and emphasize the myriad other concerns. And I'll just close with one thought. The burden is not and cannot be on small municipalities like Thames Centre to solve this so-called housing crisis by making ourselves more like London or Kitchener-Waterloo or even Woodstock. We can see those cities building up and in, as well as their sprawling suburban growth, where they have services, amenities, public transportation, all readily available to be accessed for people that are entering the housing market or exiting larger homes into smaller ones to be able to access those services more readily. Our neighbors want to live in Dorchester. We don't want to live in Dorchester to see us follow this trend. We can and should maintain a unique village character, which is why all of us moved here in the first place. Thank you.
Well, Jacob, what's your day job? Because I think this is not the first time you've done this by the sounds of it.
It's not, your worship, and I'll leave it to you to guess, but I'm making these comments as in my capacity as a resident and a neighbor, and not in my day job. So I'll just make that clear.
And just one more question, is your partner going to speak as well? Or are you speaking for both?
No, I think that I was liberal with my time and I've taken up the
Okay.
time that we had equally allotted.
All right, thank you very much. The next person I have on my list is Darren Gilbert. Darren, are you here?
This is working. I have to follow Jacob. I was sitting there in my chair thinking, please don't let me be
Yeah,
next.
he was very impressive, wasn't he?
Well, Mayor Warwick and council and staff, thanks for giving me the top opportunity to speak. I picked up something that Mayor Warwick said when she gave her address today and saying that it's great to see the town out here at the council meetings again. And it says a lot. There's a lot of familiar faces here, and it says a lot to the size of this community as it stands today, knowing these people and having them know me and my family. So, it kind of hammers home a lot of what some of us are going to say today at this meeting. I sent my letter into Director Bancroft, and I hope everybody had a chance to read it along with the other 300 and some odd pages of letters that came in. I won't touch on a lot of those points again. I don't think it's needed. Jacob mentioned a lot of great points in his address. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit more hitting home to me and my family. We live on Ida Street. We are the furthest house on the west end of Ida Street, arguably one of the most affected properties if this development was to continue and council found it necessary to push it through. So my comments today kind of reflect how me and my family are feel about this. First and foremost is the noise and dust pollution that will be that will affect our property. A development of this size is going to take a number of years to complete. We see it now with the boardwalk. I don't know how many phases are in that subdivision. I tried to find it on the site. I was unable to find it. I believe we're on phase 2 or 3 now. And any of the contractors that work in that site, if you talk to them, they'll tell you right away that it's like working in a dust storm over there. The prevailing winds in this area of the province come from the west. Our house will be pelted with dust and sand for years to come. Both my wife and I work from home. The noise from the constant beeping of heavy equipment that'll be moving earth around and putting up buildings. We'll go years without being able to keep our windows open. We have no windows on the east side of our home, so all of our windows will be letting in noise and dust. So certainly affecting our quality of life. The pest, that's probably not the right word, but the animal population that lives currently on that property thinking of the mice and other pests, I'll use that word, but where are they going to go without, being a very close property to this development? No doubt we are going to be having rodent problem on our property when this land starts getting cleared. The water table is a very delicate balance in that area of Dorchester. My septic or my sump pump runs constantly in the wet season. In the dry season, it still runs every 2 minutes. It's a very, very delicate balance. Steve Young's been out there a number of times installing different systems just to make sure we don't have that in-ground pool in our basement. All this development, infill, hard surfacing of these lands, how is that going to affect the water level in my neighborhood? And will that ultimately end up with destroying my basement? And if that's the case, whose fault's that going to be? Who's going to pay that bill? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be the municipality? Is it going to be the developer? That's a good point there. Like who pays that bill? And then finally, if the council deems that this is absolutely necessary to put this development in at this time, this is what the municipality needs. If that's the decision that's made, what my ask then is to amend the proposal to not negatively impact as many residents as it currently is. And the way I'm seeing that is the extensions of the current streets that are there, the individuals that are living on quiet dead-end streets like us that are raising our families. My daughter can ride her bike up and down the road without having to worry about cars running up and down the road. It would be great if it was deemed necessary to approve this subdivision, that none of those streets are negatively impacted by extending them. And with that, our property values, while would still take somewhat of a hit, would mainly stay about the same, hopefully. The safety of our kids would continue to be there on those quiet streets. And as far as the servicing that has to be done, to an earlier point, we will not be even into a point where we have to hook up or not hook up. We just wouldn't have that decision to be made. So with that, I do have one final question, and perhaps it's not one that can be answered now, but I guess I'll turn to Director Bancroft. But the one question I had when I read through the development was, it was saying that the pumping station was to be funded by forward paying the development charges. My question is, shouldn't those funds be used more for other costs associated to this development and not almost offsetting a cost that the developer should be incurring over and above that to make the profits that they're going to be making by putting this subdivision in Dorchester?
So I think maybe the first question that we can answer for you, Darren, is the water concern. Do you think that would be something you could address, Mr. Bancroft? And that was, I think you were worried about basements flooding and stormwater management and different questions like that.
Your worship, I'm looking at the developer to perhaps jump in and answer that question.
On you go, Steve.
I can answer that. That's as part of the pre-consultation and the work we did with our reports, the hydrogeological study, that informs that very issue. Where the groundwater is, what the direction of the flows go, how do we creep the balance that exists there today. So that's part of that engineering work that's been done. There's 3 different companies that were involved in that report, including the environment. So that's why we do it, to make sure we don't drain the wetlands, we don't overstimulate the wetlands and make it a swamp, that the groundwater, and we are on clay up there. That's the issue with your sump, right? It hits that clay and it just sits there. We have that on our side in various spots too. So it's one of those things that we address through our engineering reports.
And then your second question was regarding development fees.
That's right.
So do you
Yeah, I can jump in, your worship. So with development charges, the requirement for a pumping station on the north side of the river is something that would be growth related, and the municipality would be looking at collecting development charges to fund that project. ultimately, it is the developer's responsibility, notwithstanding the pumping station, to install required infrastructure. So that would include, extensions of any water mains, extensions of, sanitary sewers within the development, storm sewers, the construction of roads. That's all the responsibility of the developer. So that is something that the developer needs to finance himself. It's his obligation to satisfy the installation of that infrastructure. That's no different with any other subdivision in the municipality, in that that's a responsibility of the development community.
Great. Steve, sorry, Steve, is it? Yeah. Just in response to the studies that you've had, I took a look at some of the documents that were available. While I could speak to certain things, those studies certainly isn't one of them. So if there's an opportunity, maybe at a future meeting to dumb it down to sort of my level, so I can understand what that means. My worry again, with those levels, is it's a very delicate balance the way it is now. My neighbors on my street all see that. It's well known by the municipality. We have all, not all of us, I think 4 out of 5 of the houses on my side of Ida Street have all hooked up directly to the storm sewers for the sheer amount of water that is pulled out of our houses on a minute by minute basis. And while those reports are probably great in theory, I would be concerned as to how it folds out in practice.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And thanks, Darren, for all your questions and coming tonight. Now, if you think I'm gonna murder Janice's name, I'm worried about the next name, which is Chijitsky Nixon. Is that right?
You're very close.
Okay. Okay, thank you. How do you say it, just in case?
Chiska.
Chiska, okay, thank you. Donna Powell, is Donna here? Yep. Perfect, thank you, Donna. Tim Piper? Is Tim here? Okay, Michelle. I think I've gotten names that I'm not used to. Kalaja, Michelle. Okay, Ian McDonald. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you. Never been to one of these forums before, but I will.
Right, it's a good time to start.
But I mirror Darren's sentiments. I do know a lot of people in this room as well. I live at the corner of Amber and Marion Drive. And behind me is a proposed park directly behind my property. Is there any setbacks for any of our properties? Janice is my neighbor beside me. Excuse me. Is there any setbacks from the 7 properties that are on the west side of that proposed park area? Or is it going to come right up back to our property line?
So who would like to answer that question?
Yeah, if I'm looking at the map, so if your property line abuts it now, like that's not changing. That land right there will remain the same.
So the park comes right to my back.
That's right. Yeah.
To the back property.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question. So beyond that, behind my property where the park stops and medium density starts, that's an elevated area for that's been there forever since I've been here for 8 years. Is that going to get knocked down, or are you building townhouses on top of that, which essentially the whole fall when there's nothing on the trees, you're just going to stare in my house?
Yeah, I understand the topography that you're referring to. So will it be knocked down? There is some earthwork there required because you got to strip the topsoil off to build on it. I'm not sure how deep the topsoil is. It's likely at least a foot. So it will be higher because the road is higher and the access to that site will be Marion Street.
And all of our houses are cut into the side of the hill with walkouts, which means you're elevated much higher than the rest of our properties. Like whoever, if there's windows on that side of the property, that's 50, 60 feet behind my house.
Yeah, at the corner, it comes closer. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Okay. That's the only question I have. Thank you.
Sarah or Carlos Almeida? No questions? Thank you. Andy Jackson? No? Okay, great. Cody Summers? Okay. Patrick Obi? Yep. You just have to do it in a really deep voice, though. Okay.
Okay, so, sorry, Steve? Jenny Gravers. I believe you were talking, somebody was talking, maybe it was Alan, I don't know, one of you said something about, this housing is gonna be, it's like affordable housing. I think it was you, right?
Yeah, I said that the affordable and affordability are two different things. So I only ask or say that clarifying the
Right.
affordability response is to have various housing types
Okay,
at very different price points. So single family, large single family are different than two-story townhouse for that example, right? So if you're coming into the market and your affordability is at the lower end of the scale, then you're more apt to go to the two-story housing,
okay.
townhouse housing.
Are you aware what the market looks like right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm a mortgage broker and it is killing me to watch 20-year-old families just starting out getting $800,000 mortgages. All right, it's killing me. It's disgusting. Starter homes are $500,000 homes. No, that's where they should be. Those are starter homes. Townhomes, we're seeing all these new townhomes being built. They're being sold for 800,000 plus. That's not helping out our youngsters as well. It's certainly not helping out our seniors, right? If we want to help this housing crisis, we need to start at the top and get the seniors into some proper long-term care homes and some proper housing so that they're willing to leave their houses, because I sure as hell wouldn't want to be doing that right now with the condition that these senior housing is looking like right now. So we need to get them out of their homes into something decent, and that's going to free up room for the young families to come in. Okay. Yeah, $800,000 townhomes. I mean, come on, like we know that's probably on the low side, even what we're going to be seeing. I mean, the market's going to dip a little bit yet in the next 6 months, but I just want to say it kills me to watch, and I think it's really sad.
I think, Jenny, those are really valid comments. I think that you know, we do recognize in Ontario that there is a housing crisis. I don't think it can be solved just by one solution. I think it has to be a partnership with our federal dollars, our provincial dollars, municipal help, and private as well. So as a mortgage broker, I think you're very well aware of what the market is and how difficult it is right now. And you're right. There's going to be people with mortgages for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and we don't want to be Toronto. It's not our job to solve Toronto's housing crisis.
Right.
You know, Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Ford can deal with that. These bigger cities need to start building up to get, they're the ones with the amenities. We don't have those amenities, but what we can do is help our seniors out.
Yep.
The seniors that have grown up here deserve to stay here, and we need to look after them. That should be our job.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, thank you.
Chris Akins. Welcome, Chris. You don't have to run. It's okay. It's not part of your 2 minutes.
Thank you for having me. My name's Chris Akins. I live at the corner of Amber and Linwood. We've been there for 5 years, and it's myself and my wife and my 2 girls. And I trust what you're saying about your drainage. And this was mentioned as well. Come to my house in the spring at the corner of Amber and Linwood, and you'll be in 3 feet of water. And this has been a problem since we moved in. It was not disclosed to us when we moved in, but since then we've talked to other neighbors that the drainage was not done properly in the division that we were in. So while I trust that these studies have been done, I don't necessarily trust that it'll get done right again the second time. And when we speak about the sump pumps going, we're not joking. It is incredibly wet. And so I trust your studies. I know you have them, but if you walk in my backyard in the spring, you'll lose your shoe.
And at the corner, I'm telling you, the water doesn't go up to where the sewer is, and there is feet of water every spring. So I just wanted to mention that as a side. My question was more about the municipality's responsibility to the province. You mentioned that the province has a housing plan. Does council, are they obliged to vote for X amount of development based on what the province is telling them? Or does this ultimately come down to you as councillors who live in our community being able to decide yes or no if this type of housing development should come in? Jacob mentioned the incredible increase to the population in our community. The question is council obliged to meet a certain amount of housing per year based on what the province wants?
I will say that this particular government is very much pro-development of houses. And I know as council, we've discussed different options before. The reality is and I'm not going to say it's Mr. Stapleton or anybody, but I mean, reality is if council tries to block something that there is a good reason to have, more than likely, we're going to be into an appeal situation where the council, where our municipality is paying legal fees to go to a tribunal to be told, this is what you're getting. So in this format, we're trying to work together to get something that works for everybody and avoid having to go through an appeal basis where we're going to have something shoved down our throats that we didn't want. Now, that's my read on it. If Mr. Bancroft wants to add a more professional flavor to that, he's welcome to. And if Deputy Mayor Elliott, you have a comment, you can say that as well. Yeah. So I'll start with our professional, Mr. Bancroft.
Your worship, I think your choice of words were perfect. They were to the point, and I really have nothing further to add. You were exactly correct.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Elliott, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just add to that, that the province has shown already, they're not afraid to step in and ignore local council and local municipalities' wants and needs. Bill 109, Bill 3 are all examples of acts that were passed in the last year by this current government to override municipal oversight. And yeah, that's all it takes. It takes the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to sign one piece of paper to completely ignore what everyone in this room around this horseshoe, our staff, say. And I think it's really important that we realize that, because as Mayor Warwick said, we have to work together to get what our community wants. And as we sit here and we listen to everyone, we want to massage this. We want to make this work for everybody as best as we can, because at the end of the day, there is the absolute risk. This goes to the province, and sorry, Steve, you're the one sitting in here, so I'm going to use you as an example. Steve gets exactly what he put on this piece of paper tonight, and that's not what anyone wants. And that is a massive risk to us. And I know it's been brought up by other members of public who say, we can stop this. Do we have targets? Thames Center isn't responsible for this. At this point in time, the province doesn't care how they meet their housing targets. They want 1.5 million houses built in the next 10 years, and they don't care who builds it. Yes, it absolutely should be the cities that build it. But if you look at any of the studies out right now, Peel, York, Toronto, they're not going to meet their housing targets. The City of London is not going to meet their housing targets just by the sheer way that they push away development. They're not going to meet their targets, and that housing has to go somewhere. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, it is probably going to land in our laps because they're not doing their jobs in the cities. And it's really, really unfortunate. But just to add to that, if you've read the Housing Task Force recommendations that came out, if anyone's taken them, I posted them on Facebook this week. The recommendations that are going to the province from the Housing Task Force that they created is that municipalities do too much public consultation and that we create too much red tape at municipalities, and the province wants to take away all of that. One of the recommendations is that if council takes too long to make a decision, the developer gets the green light to do what they want. And that is and it is, I can speak for myself, but I think that I can speak for the rest of the council that is a huge concern to us, that once those recommendations start flowing from the province, we're screwed. Like there's nothing we can do. And it doesn't matter what any of us around the table think or say. And
Okay.
so it's an unfortunate reality. And I think, and it's my opinion that Mayor Warwick's correct, that we really have to try and make the best of this and work with our developers and work with our residents and massage it to create something that works in our community. And is it exactly what he's proposing tonight? Probably not. No offense, Steve, but not going to happen. But we can all work together to make something.
Thank you for that answer, and I appreciate that kind of candid answer. And I feel so disappointed because we moved to Dorchester and we felt so lucky and grateful to be here. Both my wife and I. My wife was born in Owen Sound. I'm from Deep River, and we desperately wanted the type of upbringing that I think many of you wanted for your children to be the experience for our children. And when I think about that road being extended on Linwood, where our children are learning how to bike and where lots of children in the community are playing, I'll be blunt. When we saw that, when we came home from Deep River, we had a very serious family conversation about leaving the community because we were so distraught by that map. So I hope you consider that as well. And I know that our hands might be tied with the province, but I'm hoping that this councillor, maybe the next, stands up for this community and for Dorchester. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Matt Jansel? You okay? All right. Ryan Luft? Welcome, Ryan.
So I'm requesting 6 minutes since my neighbors here are not willing to speak about anything.
Do it in 3 different voices then.
Yeah. So I just have a couple things that I wanted to mention. So number one, on the side of traffic, I understand there's going to be a traffic study that's going to be contemplated. In terms of the streets that border this proposed subdivision, Marion, Richmond, Clara Street, currently there's no sidewalks. Those are very narrow roads. Would there be any responsibility from the developer side of things to input sidewalks in on those streets, for example, potentially widen them? I think a lot of people really got behind the Richmond pedestrian side of things. And to be honest, from my personal experience, it did not go over very well. I think it's too narrow. Now we've put these placards up that if you're pushing a stroller, you have to go on the road to get around those things because there's not enough shoulders. So my hope is, again, I live on Marion Street. I didn't mention that, but from my perspective, I feel like there needs to be some accountability to look at the surrounding area. And that's another point that I'll get into as well. So just on the traffic side of things, I don't know if that's something we can discuss now, or if that's something that would come when the traffic study comes through.
I'm all ears, your worship.
Continue on.
Sure. In terms of the road layout itself, I hear the concerns of everyone about all of these through streets that are going to be extended. My concern is the road that is now connecting to Marion that is going to have traffic basically driving right into the fronts of houses that are on Marion Street there on the south side. So, you're going to have 800 homes in there, ballpark, maybe 1.5 cars per house. I now have 1,200 vehicles in that area that are probably going to be using that Marion Street Road as an exit, that those headlights are going to be shining right into my kids' bedrooms all night long. So is that something in terms of, I'm not a planner by any means. I thought maybe could we just have a right turn lane to just enter the subdivision there and not have anyone exiting, but is that something that, can be reconsidered?
Through you, your worship, I thank you very much for raising that point. What we see before us is the developer's vision on how he wishes to develop the land. So it's not as if the municipality has had an opportunity to evaluate the request.
Okay.
So I thank you for bringing these points forward. We'll certainly, take a close look at this information that you're bringing forward to us. And again, it'll be something that council will consider at a future meeting next year.
Okay.
So just to add,
Go ahead.
if I could, it was something we did struggle with, quite frankly, because there's so many houses with driveways access to Marion.
Mhm.
What we tried to accomplish was lining up with a driveway, so it didn't go into someone's living room. So the lights coming out would line up with a garage. The point wasn't lost on us. We did look at it. We just, the alternatives was, maybe it wasn't you, but it was your neighbor. So we were really constrained with that fabric that is North Marion. But again, we'll talk about it internally as well with staff and see if there are other options. But that's, I wanted to add that. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think to that point, there is a lot of homes that have no tree coverage on the front of their properties, but there are a lot of homes closer to the Richmond side of things that do have tree coverage on the front of their property that maybe it could be shifted that way, that it's maybe going to be less intrusive. Okay, so moving on from traffic, so we'll call that Andy's topic. Well, medium density, the housing, I apologize if it's already been mentioned, but I didn't see a height restriction on the medium density housing.
Through your worship, I believe it's 10.5 meters, which basically is equivalent, to 2 stories. Sorry, 3 stories. Thank you.
Okay, another question?
Sure.
If I could as well add something, we asked for a special provision for 10.5 for single family homes because of the topography of the site and the way it's calculated on height, because a lot of them will be walkout buildings. So that's why we asked for 10.5 meters for the single family home.
Yeah, I didn't see the 10 meters in the official design, so I just wanted to make sure, because I don't want to have this agreed to at some point and then all of a sudden we're looking at, a 10-story apartment complex.
Brian, go ahead.
Yep. The other thing on the location of the medium density housing, again, the homes bordering on Marion Street, to me, and I'm sure most of my neighbors would agree, the medium density housing does not really fit within the characteristics of that portion of the neighborhood in terms of the type of housing. And I would say that, again, more so on the traffic side of things, that it seems like the concentration of those locations is maybe not ideal for some of the folks on Marion Street. Oh, sure. So again, I just was wondering, in terms of consideration for the location of those, I'm not going to be here and say I'm against the subdivision. I understand the pressure that we're under to build homes, but I think as a community, we should be coming together to build homes that fit within the community and not basically make it something that we're not. Last one, this will be Matt's section. Very fast. I just want to understand from an infrastructure standpoint, obviously there's a lot of growth here. We've talked about sewers, we've talked about a lot of the other infrastructure related to the site itself. Broader to the community, what assessments being done in terms of our support for our schools, what's being done in terms of support for public services, fire, ambulance, police. I think, being a member of the community for the last 4 years, I will say the presence of the police department is lackluster, to say the least. So to now have these additional homes here, what is going to happen? I will say the OPP did come to my house very quickly when I set my alarm off, but I did that to myself. So just in terms of that, and obviously other public support and services that are out there.
Okay,
So
I'm going to let Mr. Bankoff respond. And I think Deputy Mayor Ellie, did you have a comment? Okay.
Through your worship. So earlier, we talked about development charges that would be required. So development charges deals with growth related matters, not only dealing with hard services like municipal water and sanitary sewers, but also soft services such as fire protection. Also, from a parks and recreation standpoint, our sports facilities, arenas and that sort of thing. So through the collection of development charges, we need to ensure that we've got the certain level of service, which applies to in the future for new residents in the community, so that we ensure that we've got the same level of service now as compared to in the future moving forward. So the other thing in terms of schools, so we consult quite frequently with, in particular, the Thames Valley District School Board, in terms of sharing information so that they are up to speed, relative to, what the pupil yields would be, in terms of, school planning and that sort of thing. So, we certainly understand the need to have, the schooling capacity in the community. And, yeah, certainly we've got those communications, underway with that school board.
Okay, that's all I had.
I'll just add to the school piece because I know it was in some of the letters and the correspondence that came in, that the schools in Dorchester are at capacity or over capacity. So we received the revised accommodation plan for Thames Valley District School Board. None of the schools in Dorchester, including the high school, are even near capacity at all. But one thing is that when it comes to the consideration of new schools or expanding schools, that is completely out of our hands. And that lies at the school board and the province. And one thing that I will say is that one thing that we've done in this term of council is really foster that relationship between the school board and us, and as the director of planning said, sharing that information because that wasn't happening before. And although the funding model from the province in order for additions or new schools to go in, it doesn't encapsulate growth. And so they only look at, the province of Ontario only looks at the students that are in seats today in terms of funding. So for example, up in Thorndale, they're at 120% capacity at the public school up there. And the school is now just considering an addition because they have enough students sitting in portables to consider doing an addition. They don't look at growth at all in terms of funding models from the province to school board. So that's something that's completely out of our hands, but it is something that we're constantly advocating for, is that those considerations are taking place and that the school board at least knows what we have on the docket, so they can forecast that.
So in terms of the forecasting, I guess we could potentially be in like a Milton situation where they have 500 kids at one school for junior kindergarten the 1 year. And then the next year we got to get a new school. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, Lisa Molnar. No, okay. Which I'm sad about because I think she was with Dennis and Lorraine and I wanted to see what she looked like because I know what they look like. Christina Lima. Okay, thank you, Christina. Shauna McDonald. Okay. She has a deep voice. Jake Lutzma. Jake. Okay, Neil McDonald. Welcome, Neil.
Good evening, your worship, fellow councillors. Okay. I'll get more comfortable then. Good evening, your worship and councillors. Name is Neil MacDonald. I'm 7 Ida Street. I've already forwarded my letter to council for you folks to review. And I looked at a lot of the hydrological assessments and the depths that appear to be on the wetlands that are in this proposed development area. I have spoke with Thames River Conservation Authority about a couple of the items that are there, and one item I believe was missed. I want to reiterate what Mr. Gilbert said about how high the water table actually is. It is ridiculous. The town came in and helped myself out on our property years ago. And the water issue still exists underground. The water levels that are back there, they don't move over the period of time. They don't change during the seasons. Those ponds are at the same height all the time. You can put your holes in the ground, you get your readings and everything that, but once the development happens, you can't say that the water table is not going to change on the surrounding areas. You've heard people from other areas speaking up here. They're all mentioning the water. It's a severe problem for this township. the one item there, the one wetland actually shows that it's going to become a block 34 of open space. It doesn't show that it's going to be let to remain as it is. Capping or covering these is going to be an issue. One question I do have, has a township ever gone to appeal?
We had in a situation where we've made a decision and it's been appealed by a developer.
Yes, no, appealed by the government.
Oh, well, we wouldn't get appealed by the government.
Well,
Yeah.
what you were stating earlier, how
Oh, by what happened if, let's say, for
Private.
example, developer B has a plan in place and we say, absolutely not, we don't want this. Developer B will basically start a tribunal against us with the Ontario Land Tribunal. And at that time, then a decision will be rendered. And usually if we don't have a good reason, the judgment will go with the person who, I can let Mark talk about it a little bit more because that's more of your
Yeah, thank you,
area.
your worship. So I've had experience in terms of going before the land tribunal on several occasions in my career. But just basically in terms of dealing with the hearing, it has to do with having a group of experts go against another group of experts. And it's the evidence is provided by both sides, and then the tribunal basically renders a decision. That basically sums it up in a nutshell.
So is the answer no? The council has never gone to the tribunal? We've approved everything.
Through your worship, I guess I've been providing planning here in Thames Center for 7 years. Yeah, 7 years altogether, including my tenure with Middlesex County. Over that 7-year period, I think I've gone to the tribunal once, maybe twice. But we do have a recent appeal over in Thorndale dealing with the Monteith subdivision, where there's a third party appeal. There's a neighbor that is concerned and has appealed that proposal. So it will be going before the tribunal.
one more question. When I was looking at when I was reviewing some of the attached documents that were in there, on the conceptual stormwater management strategy, page 18, storm watershed area plan, you see an old map of a lot of the familiar names that you'll see around town here. And when you look at some of the other maps, you see those names, and those people are all still here. You hear what's happening in here today, how we're feeling about this. But my question is, in particular on that page 18, there's a bunch of dotted lines that go through, and I know you won't be able to give me the answer right now, but I will leave the document here. I'd like to know if those dotted lines are going through, and if that actually is water streams that were going through those zones at that time.
Through your worship, I would defer this to the developer.
I'm sorry, I don't know at this point. I'm not familiar with that page, but we can give you the answer. We can get the answer.
Certainly. So do I present this to you folks first and then that you hand it off to him, or?
You could give it to the clerk and she can provide copies. Yep. Yep. Okay. So anything, Neil, anything else?
One last statement.
Sure.
I just want to let you know that we will be considerably jeopardized, our street, if this has gone through, and it's been known, and we're letting you know again.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. All right, Amy Thompson. Okay, thank you, Amy. Jeff Somerville. Jeff, are you here? Okay, I don't see Bill Greason. Did he come in? Nope. Jeremy Ham. Oh, sorry, is Bill Greason on the screen?
Your worship, we've gone through the list of people, of in-person people,
Okay.
and we're moving on to the online unless somebody says.
What list of? I've got this list and I've gone through my list. So just. That sounds good. What's your name? Trish Robertson?
I have an email and a telephone call.
That's that man over there. And then the other person. Okay, and the other person that wished to speak? Kelly Martin? Okay, so Alan, how do you want to handle this? Do you want to let our people in here speak quickly then and then go into Bill?
Absolutely, your worship. Let's get everybody inside here.
Okay, Trish, you're on.
This is all new to me. So it's been a 2-week learning curve as I have knocked on doors on Clara, Ida, Eva, Mini, Village Gate and Village Gate Crescent. So greetings. I don't know what the proper thing is, but okay. I'm concerned about the old growth trees that are there, and I'm going to really try to keep myself not be the Lorax, but it's going to be very, very difficult. There is zero plan for the old growth oaks that are on that property. And if you put an orange fence up around a tree, that does not protect its root system. And I think the neighbors all would agree with all the concerns that have been brought forth. There's no contingency plan for that. So my concern is, what are you going to do about the old growth oak trees that are on that property, Mr. Stapleton?
Well, I'm not sure exactly where they're located, but if they're within the open space or the EP area, they will be maintained.
They should be maintained regardless of where they are. Is there anything that we can do as people of the community, Mr. Bancroft, to protect them?
Through your worship, unless they are contained in an identified natural heritage feature like a woodlot or a wetland, there's very little that the municipality can do to protect it. Unfortunately, we do rely on the Middlesex Natural Heritage study, which was an extensive study. It's got an inventory of natural heritage features. And again, if identified, then certainly there will be the need to protect those types of features.
In Elgin County, they have gone out and they have mapped all their old growth trees and they all have plaques on them. Can we adopt that as something to do in Thames Center to save some of these old growth trees instead of developing through them and around them?
I think and I read your letter, Trish. And I think that when we're talking about policy coming from the county, that's something that we at the county would have to talk about. And we do have a person that is in charge. His name is Mark Brown. And he is in charge. He's a good person to talk to for any information you want to get about preserving areas and what the natural heritage areas are. He's also good for noxious weeds and things like that too, if you have any questions. But that is where we would start with that type of policy. And I will say that one thing that we do recognize at the county is that our canopy in Middlesex County is not where it should be. We're very aware of that. And when we look at developments, we look to have additional trees planted when trees are taken down. That does not replace old growth trees, but it is something that we're really aware of. So thank you for bringing that forward, Trish.
Okay. As people have said, I'm just going to read what I wrote so I can stay on point. Council needs to listen to the community that will be affected. We are the ones affected as it is our community and literally our backyards. Development is desired north of the GTA. Communities in the northern part of Ontario are desperate for development money. Some communities already have housing that is vacant and very affordable, not 800,000 or 500,000. You could send the developers there where the land is not some of the most fertile in North America. And I see some grins and smirks from around the horseshoe. And I find that disconcerting because as I knocked on doors, there's a huge distrust of the council and the way that things are done in Ontario in general, not just this council in general. So there are communities in Northern Ontario, north of the GTA. You would be welcome there, Mr. Stapleton. I bet they would roll out the red carpet for you. Atacocan, Kenora, Armstrong, Mine Center. They're all right for development. There's all kinds of people there. There's all kinds of amenities. There's already streets. You don't need to build much. Sewers are there. It's all ready to just plug and play. I have spoken to a number of neighbors, and my count right now, and I'm guessing by some of the conversations I heard this evening, the number of people that will put their houses up for sale is at 15. So when you have people that are willing to leave their community and people who are awake all night because of the property that they have just purchased, and now you're going to develop their backyard. We moved here for a reason. And this development was not the reason. We're watching Boardwalk happen, and it's not very pretty, and it's certainly not in tune with the community. I am disappointed that Eric Gaskin from Upper Thames Regional Conservation Authority did not submit a report. I have multiple emails from him where Ducks Unlimited had asked to be CC'd on, so they are aware of the situation as well. So Mr. Bancroft, I'm not sure why he did not submit something, because he assured me in an email and on the phone multiple times that he would. So I will follow up with that. I'm sure you will probably follow up with that as well. And that's all I have really, and I hope I kept it.
I think you did great. Thank you. Okay, Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start again. Kelly Martin, I'm on Ida Street. I have two questions. One relates to clarification for this gentleman. You had indicated that it wouldn't be mandatory to hook up. So I know, although that could be years down the road, my understanding that with sewers, it's actual a two-part. So residents that are currently on Byron indicated it's a two-piece. So they were mandated to pay, I think they said $700 a month for 10 years to take it to their home or something like that. And then it was up to them to negotiate with whomever to actually install to the home. That is my understanding.
I'm going to let Mr. Bancroft fill us in.
Your worship, unfortunately, I don't know any of those details. So
Kelly, I haven't heard any of the numbers that you've said before.
Okay.
We are doing a project right now.
Okay.
And where people, are actually on wells and septics and
Right.
whatnot, and we're going through there.
Okay.
And my understanding is they don't have to hook up if they don't want to. There's a charge for that. What happens is, eventually people's septic fail. And at that time, they may choose as an alternative to go on to the system that's in their front yard.
Okay.
We have stated before, we believe it's good planning to have wastewater and water run through municipal, basically the road allowances, so that it works out that we don't have to dig and redig. And if
For sure.
something has to be done, like a road needs to be fixed, everything gets done at the same time. That is the most efficient
Makes
way of
sense,
doing
yeah.
things. And we're not trying to bankrupt people. We're trying to make sure it's affordable. We do have ways that we debenture in the future. And we also try and make it equitable. So a project that may be more expensive, if people don't bear that, it evens out. And that's what we try to do as a council.
Okay. So I actually spoke to several people on Byron.
Yep.
A few that didn't hook up. So they currently still are not hooked up because their septic is running and it's working. And it was those different residents that explained to me what that process looked like. They still had the upfront of $700 a month for 10 years, even the people that didn't hook up because they didn't take that second step.
I can't comment. It doesn't sound like our normal process. I don't know if that's something, Mike, you can go through, but we can certainly get that information for you, Kelly. It sounds new to me. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going with, I would just ask people what their experience was, positive, negative, what can we expect? My second question, I tried looking through all the documentation. How do I find out who the owner of the numbered company is. I know that you're representing the numbered company. Who's the owner? Okay. That's all I had. Okay. Someone's glasses.
Thank you. Did somebody leave their glasses up there? Oh, okay, you can get them whenever you don't have to step on anybody. We won't take them. Okay, so now I believe, Alan, we're ready for the
You mentioned that if you don't hook up, there's a fee you have to pay not to hook up.
we can get you that information of what the policy and the bylaw is. What I'll do is if you give the clerk your name and number, I'll let our public works people explain to you exactly. Because I'm just worried about the time,
Okay.
Mr. Fountain, that's all. And we're trying to get everybody on. So, but we can get that information for you for sure. All right, Alan, we've got Mr. Greason.
Yes, your worship. Mr. Greason will be coming in via audio only.
Okay.
Okay, this is a question to the council specifically. This whole process that we've been going through could have been avoided if council had made the logical decision in the application for the plan amendment, which is 0322. And just for people to remember, in that application, the 1598 Richmond Street property in question could have been removed. Parcels 1 and 2, which are Donnybrook Drive and Dorchester Road, could have been added to the Dorchester settlement area. Now, these latter areas would blend well with development currently in process and avoid the need of a pumping station to transport wastewater through neighborhoods and across the Thames River. Again, a notice of motion was put forward at the September 12th meeting to reconsider this decision, and the council did nothing to discuss it. So my question is, why? I want to know from the council, why was this erroneous decision made, which it to me demonstrates complete lack of judgment, accountability, and common sense.
Well, Mr. Greason, as much as I would love to discuss this matter, I don't think we can go into that tonight. I think we're discussing the matter that's in front of us, which is the one that Auburn Development has on the table. So as much as I would like to continue that discussion, I think we'll have to limit it to the actual topic tonight. And then that's all with due respect, Mr. Greason. I appreciate your comments.
Well, my other comment is that there's a complete lack of transparency and open communication to the community about these applications. The longer notice period should have been provided, complete information provided. And it seems to be lacking, reflects badly on the current council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greason. And then we have Jeremy Ham.
Your worship, is it all right if I go through the process on my system outside of line with you? Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Your worship, I'm bringing in Tim and Donna Hill. Tim and Donna Hill.
Tim and Donna Hill, welcome. So are Tim and Donna Hill here, Alan?
Your worship, it appears they left. At this point in time, I would like to remind the members in here via Zoom to please go to the YouTube channel, the Thames Center on the YouTube channel. Because if you're here, this is a request to speak.
Whoever you want to do next, I guess.
Your worship, Jeremy Ham.
Okay, welcome.
Your worship, I would like to remind members of the public that if you're in the Zoom meeting and you do not wish to speak, please leave and go to the YouTube channel. Your worship, I'm bringing in Lisa Ether. Your worship, I'm going to move on to Brandon Powell. Your worship, I'm going to move on to Jenny Grievers. Okay, if anybody would like to speak to this subject who's in the Zoom meeting, you can raise your hand using the raise your hand button. If not, we have completed our public. Oh, Heather Rundle has just joined. Yes, your worship.
Hello?
Oh, Heather?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, whenever you're ready, you
Okay.
can start.
This is very difficult. I would just like to comment on something that was said. I live on Linwood. So with my 3 young daughters, my house would be a through street. Are we to understand by your comments that council has really no power to stop developers and builders coming into our towns, into our communities, and changing the way we live, and not willing to fight to incur the fees or stand up to what is needed to stop them from coming in.
So I guess the answer to that is that when lands are zoned for future growth and development, the person who owns the land has the right to come forward to propose to bring something. It's council's job to look through that and to look at the recommendations of our planners and to go by professional reports that make sure that it's safe or good planning for people. And really, when it's in that situation, we do have some limitations. And what we do tonight is we're trying to listen to everybody's concerns and work together to make sure we can get into a solution that works for everybody. And I think we're pretty realistic. Everybody in this room knows that at some point, not everybody's going to be happy with decisions that are in front of us, but we are trying to get to that point where we do get a good solution. And I think as far as thinking that that land will be maintained as what it is and what it has been for the last, I don't know how long Barry Hunter has proposed to develop that land, but a long time. I don't think that it'll ever be status quo. We will see change, but it's important that we have meetings like this to figure it out. So I hope that answers your question a bit, Heather, but if you have another question, go ahead.
It does answer my question, but as many of my neighbors has already said, the disappointment, it's heart-wrenching that we moved even to this side of the river to get away from the development, to be in the small town, to have that atmosphere and to see it being bulldozed and houses being popped up everywhere. It's sad. And it's not why I moved here. It's not why I grew up in Dorchester. I went to LDSS. I came back with my family for this community, and it's changing at a really rapid pace into something that I don't recognize anymore. But that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next person, Ellen.
Your worship, that concludes the online participation.
Okay. So, council, any questions at this time? Yep, Deputy Mayor Elliott.
Thank you. And through your worship, this was one of my questions from before the meeting. I know it brought up, and I know Upper Thames takes a significant amount of time. And we ran into this trouble with our last subdivision approval and the amount of time that Upper Thames took to comment on a development. But I'm just wondering, have you, through your worship, to our director of planning, have you had any feedback from Upper Thames in regards to this application?
Through your worship, we've had some preliminary feedback, verbal, from the Conservation Authority, and they've received the studies. They're involved in reviewing them, and certainly once feedback is available, that will be brought back to our attention. I'm hopeful that sometime next year I'll be in a position to bring forward a report, an evaluation report that takes into account all comments received, ultimately for the council's consideration. Thank you.
And wearing my other hat as chair of Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, it's coming down the pipes that these conservation authorities will be responsible if the reports aren't out in due time. So if you're putting an application into a conservation authority and they have not given you an answer within so many days, you may be due for a partial refund. You may be due for a total refund. So they're starting to light a fire under some of our conservation authorities to get this information back in timely fashion. So we can look forward to that. Councillor Hunter, I believe you had a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. It has come out tonight that this property is owned by the Hunter family, and I just want to make it publicly known that I am of no relation to that Hunter family that owns that property. just so everyone is clear. Ready?
It's a common name and you're both on that side of the river, so it would be easy to join two dots together, but thanks for clarifying that. Council, any other comments? Councillor Heeman.
I think it's been pretty humbling hearing everybody's feedback today, and this isn't our first rodeo. We've been through similar contentious developments, and I would just like people to know that we do exercise every authority that we have, limited as it may be, as you've heard tonight, that we do want to work to provide the best outcome for the community. And to that, I would just put it back to Steve here and saying, everybody came out here. We are all here. We're conducting this process for you as a developer. And I really hope that you're working in good faith and that we can find some amicable solutions here. And likewise, if you're looking for medium density should be at the service of seniors, right? And it should be accessible, single floors, so people with mobility issues can have a good life there. So thank you everyone for your comments, and thank you for your time.
Steve?
Thank you. And thanks for raising that. I have heard everyone. I have no doubt that there's going to be some significant changes to the layout of the plan to deal with some of the issues that we heard. We are working in good faith here, and this is part of the process. And we rarely expect our submissions to get a stamp of approval, quite frankly. We anticipate certain things, but often even in our profession, we miss the mark sometimes. And there's some personal comments that we've heard here today, and we're going to try to address them best we can through design and sizing and different things. Still having to balance the issues and the policies that we contend with. Still trying to make it affordable. But I think there is opportunity here. So we'll take that back.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to go through what we have in front of us so everybody understands, like council understands this, but I want to make sure everybody in the audience understands. So I have a motion here that report number PDS 04722 dated September 19th, 2022, related to the application for draft plan of subdivision, an application for zoning bylaw amendment for lands known municipally as 1598 Richmond Street and owned by 131976 Ontario Incorporated be received. So that means we're receiving the report tonight. We're listening to what it says. And then the second thing is that the Director of Planning and Development Services provide a subsequent report evaluating the said applications, taking into account all public and agency comments received with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. So basically, we're asking Mark to take all the comments that were given tonight and to come back with a report to council at a later date. So as we just want to make sure everybody understands, there's no decisions made to accept that. So knowing that I have read those two aloud, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Heeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? So moved. And now respectfully, I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess so that we can get a stretch of legs. Thank you. And thanks for everyone for coming out tonight. All right, so moving on now to 5.2, application for proposed plan of subdivision 39T TC 2201. Zelinka Priamo Limited, care of Caitlin Crowley is the agent. The owner is Donnybrook. That's 1045 Donnybrook Incorporated, care of Abav Maley and Stephen Macher. And the address is south side of Donnybrook Drive, east of Stardust Drive. So Mr. Bancroft will go to an overview of planning application.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I want to confirm that this proposal was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. So 120 meters to all property owners, notice was given, and also to prescribed agencies. And through this report that's before council, report number PDS 046-22, it provides background information regarding the subject proposal. So the subject property, it's 55 acres in size. It's a vacant parcel of land on the south side of Donnybrook Drive, between Stardust Drive and Dorchester Road, and backs onto Highway 401. The property is also west of the Silver Moon subdivision, accessible by Starlight Lane and Moonlight Way, which terminate at the subject property. Subject property is currently used for farming purposes for field crop production. And this property, it's designated rural industrial under the Thames Center official plan. And it's also zoned rural industrial holding. So since there's no municipal services in the area, only dry industrial uses are permitted according to the official plan. So in terms of the proposal itself, we've got a request for a draft plan of subdivision to subdivide the property into 7 blocks or parcels of land to support industrial development on individual wells and septic systems. We have a new road proposed off Donnybrook Drive that would connect to Moonlight Way, and a stormwater management parcel along with a channel ditch block to allow for the movement of stormwater management. In terms of supporting studies that have been provided, we've got a planning justification, stormwater management, noise report, archaeological and geotechnical investigation. Also, as noted in my report on page 3, I've got a listing of the permitted uses that are allowed under the M2 zone, along with some of the lotting requirements in terms of frontage and area, as well as other provisions such as setback requirements and that sort of thing. In terms of agency comments received from the Ministry of Transportation, these comments came after the preparation of my report. They've provided a standard response, Your Worship. In terms of stormwater management, they're looking for a report to be submitted for review and acceptance, security fencing, 6 feet high, adjacent to the 401 right-of-way. Also, that a land use permit be required from the Ministry of Transportation, given the proximity of the highway. The county engineer, he's requesting a land dedication for widening purposes along Donnybrook Drive, measured 18 meters from the center line of construction of County Road 78, which is Donnybrook Drive, if that right-of-way is not already to that width. He's also asking for 1-foot reserves along both sides of Donnybrook Drive opposite the new street to prevent any new access point off onto Donnybrook Drive. That way, any access would be off the new internal street. Also, a requirement for the developer to construct left and right turn lanes at the entrance of the development where the new street would meet Donnybrook Drive. And all costs associated with that construction would be the responsibility of the developer. Also, to require stormwater management plan, grading plans, and other relevant engineering plans to be reviewed and approved by the county engineer's office. From Enbridge as well as Bell Canada, they're asking for the need for any necessary easements for the provision of utilities. From the Public Works Director, he's indicated that northern limits of existing Starlight Lane needs to be looped or connected to the proposed roadway, Moonlight Way to be extended to the easterly limits of the property to allow for the future development of the adjacent property. Also eliminate the ditch channel, that an industrial cross section be applied for the future road with a 26-meter right of way, complete with curb and gutter. He also points out that from a drainage standpoint, each lot should be responsible for their own stormwater management rather than a community stormwater management facility. Stormwater management components would be governed by the Drainage Act. And if there's any alterations needed to the Newton capstick drain, a request for drainage improvements would be required. In terms of public comments, we've got a number of written submissions that have been received that are attached to my report. And that also includes a petition. And if there are additional comments that are received from the public, Your Worship, I will certainly include those in my evaluation report for council's consideration. So it's my recommendation that my report be received and that I provide a subsequent report to be dealt with at a future meeting of council. Thank you.
Thank you. And just maybe, because I don't think a lot of the people here when we were doing the other public meeting, I think you're probably outside waiting for the room to clear. I think I'll just quickly go through what we do when we ask for comments. I know that we're going to have information from the applicant in a second, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew if they were coming to bring comments, how we would do that, because I believe a number of you are listed to speak tonight. Is that correct? Alan, we've got a number of people to speak to this one.
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, so many have submitted written comments that have been posted online with this evening's agenda, which we have gotten already, which will be considered when council makes a decision. Everyone in attendance this evening wishing to participate will be provided an opportunity to provide comments virtually or by stepping up to the podium one at a time, stating your name and address during the public question period. To assist with the meeting process tonight, you may come up to the podium once, and there's a 2-minute limit for any questions, comments, and concerns. We request that you only participate in speaking tonight if you have new additional information not already addressed or presented. If you are participating virtually, you'll be brought in from the Zoom attendees section and given an opportunity to provide your information. It's then requested that you use the link in the YouTube broadcast that was attached in an email sent an hour before the meeting. In the event your questions have already been addressed, it's requested that you leave the Zoom meeting and view the meeting through the YouTube broadcast as being in the attendees section. And that's considered a request to speak if you're in the attendees section or the presenter section. Anyone who submitted written comments or registered to participate in tonight's meeting will be notified of the applicable decision. For anyone else who's in attendance and you wish to be notified, if you could please provide your name and address on the sheet located at the entrance indicating application being requested. And just a little housekeeping, the County of Middlesex is the approval agency for plans of subdivision, and the municipality conducts a statutory public meeting required by the Planning Act for consideration of plans or subdivision and condominium. Planning staff are also available to answer any questions you may have during normal office hours. The purpose of this public meeting tonight is to obtain feedback from the public, and the Director of Planning and Development will provide a subsequent report evaluating the said applications with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. Any written feedback that has been received will be considered by council when making that decision. So just so you understand, there's no decision made tonight except that the information that we have will be received. So the applicant, do we have the applicant here?
Yes, your worship, we have Caitlin Crowley.
Okay.
As the agent.
Oh, yeah. Good evening, everyone. Through your worship, my name is Caitlin Crowley, planner with Zelinka Priamo. I am here as the authorized agent on behalf of this application. I wanted to first thank Mark Bancroft for his report this evening and for his overview. I understand that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive his report for information. I just wanted to make note regarding some of the public comments that were attached at the end of his report. We have submitted a noise study as a part of our application. And through the noise study, there were a few mitigation measures that we are intending to implement in our proposed subdivision. Those mitigation measures being, building separation from the residential development to the west. And in addition to building separation, keeping the bay doors closed of the proposed buildings during service hours, as well as keeping the location of the swim pond where it is through future revisions in order to mitigate impacts to surrounding development. I just wanted to also make note that based on the D6 guidelines, that the proposed subdivision is a class 1 industrial subdivision, meaning that it will consist of light industrial uses, which have the least impact to sensitive land uses. And I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Caitlin, and I am here to available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. And now we are at the part where we can ask for public comments, and I have a list of names. So I'm going to ask for the first person if you want to provide any comments, and that's Gary Hansford. And you just have to come up, and there's a little button on that microphone you can press. It's just so that the people that are listening virtually can hear.
Okay, I only have a couple concerns with the subdivision. Basically, next to my house, the municipal drain runs. And so I get all the water from that subdivision. So we have, and the roadway is awful close to our property line. And we've had several floods over the years. And I'm a big fan of the storm management waterment pond instead. I find they work better than the individual uses. And I think if they ran that drain area beside our house, I think it's proposed for 30 meters. If it was to go like 100 meters before the road, I think all my concerns would basically be.
And I'm sure you've got a lot of experience to back that up.
I have a lot of experience with that yard, and we do it on a work basis as well. That's really my only concern.
Any comments, questions, Mark? Caitlin?
I appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. So Barbara Hansford, you were speaking. Okay, just want to make sure, you don't want to assume that somebody doesn't get a voice here. Colleen and Doreen Campbell. I actually think that was supposed to be on the other one because they were here. Henry Klinger. Okay, welcome.
Okay, I got it. No, we're up. I got the red light. Oh, that's okay. We're good. I'm not that tall. It's okay. Oh, and now I'm in the next county. Okay, few concerns about an industrial development going into an area where it's primarily been residential for forever. Now, I know our areas zone commercial residential, but primarily it's residential. Most people treat it like it's their home. And if you drive through it, it looks like it's an unusual residential area because everybody's got a big shop attached to their home. But having through roads from our neck of the woods into an industrial park, I've never seen such a conjoined situation where you have a residential neighborhood conjoined with an industrial park. And I've been all through Ontario doing shows in different parts of the province. And I've been to a lot of commercial parks and industrial parks, but there's never been any residential conjoined with it. Can you imagine living in that kind of neighborhood where you've got transport trucks and trucks coming in and out of there at any time of day? Because I don't know what hours these companies are going to be keeping that are operating in this industrial park. You know, I was kind of under the impression that it was going to be an industrial park that was kind of like what we were already living in, where it's going to be commercial residential, but that switched to now just an industrial park. I can only say that living where I'm living, I would not want to see the industrial park. So some kind of almost like a parkland berm between us and them to make them not even visible to the people that live in that area, because it shouldn't feel living at, you know, in a residence that has pools and have people having barbecues in the background with an industrial park right next to them. It seems ridiculous. It seems like a total bizarre zoning situation. So anyway, from that point of view, for the people who are listening that are developing this property, I just don't see it. You know, when I moved there, and I thought any industrial development that would keep taking place in our area would be to the west of us, because there's already an industrial park situated there, and it would move on from there and perhaps grow. And that little area there that was for sale for a while, I thought that would become more residential. So this doesn't feel like it's well suited for that particular area of land. But if it is going to happen, sometimes you have no choice. It happens regardless whether you want it or not. It should happen in a way that the people that live in this residence aren't affected in any way. And there should not be, Moonlight Way should not be joined in with another Moonlight Way that's in an industrial park, because that's just going to create a traffic flow situation. And kids do play on the streets there all the time. They're at their scooters and stuff. And they shouldn't be affected by that. Our way of life shouldn't be affected by an industrial park. It's not like it's another subdivision moving into our area, which you were discussing earlier. Even those people are at issue with that, but an industrial park's a totally different animal from having another residential area moving in beside you. So anyway, that's my point.
Thank you. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I would like to ask you a question, because you know, when you look through all the different letters and the concerns that people had, traffic and what you are saying, Henry, was one of the things that was a common theme. Are we obligated to connect the subdivisions together?
Through your worship, it's under normal circumstances, it is good practice to extend streets, because after all, you're tying in new infrastructure to existing infrastructure. But at the same time, we've certainly heard from members of the public, you know, such as this gentleman before us, along with all of the written submissions. It is quite clear that there are concerns from a traffic standpoint in terms of having the potential for industrial traffic to go onto residential streets associated with Silver Moon. So I certainly appreciate that being brought to our attention. It certainly makes me think again in terms of the appropriateness of having roads connection in this circumstance. So sorry to give you a long-winded answer to your question, but just to circle back, we're not compelled, but at the end of the day, it does come down to a decision of council. So thank you.
So
make the right decision.
that's right.
Okay.
I think that would be the short story of that one. Thank you. And now we have Christina Leshield, Leshield? Correct me on the pronunciation, Christine. Okay, Leisha, thank you.
I appreciate what you just said. As a mom of 3 young children, 2 self-employed individuals who moved out of the country to try and find a way to make our businesses and our family coexist. Even in the 5 years we've been there, we have seen development come around us that has definitely already changed the lifestyle. But seeing industrial traffic come through that neighborhood when we have our children with their friends around the neighborhood, no streetlights, no sidewalks, small animals, it would completely destroy what we've tried to create for our family as well as most of the neighborhood. So I appreciate that you are taking all of our feedback into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. John Hudson.
I just spoke for him.
Okay. Good, a good woman. Linda Wilkins. Is she here? I have her as a member of the public, so, okay. Here, it's a familiar face, Jack Barabo.
Well, nice to see everybody again and appreciate the input that's been made. I guess one example, Mark, was right beside us where the Tubbies is. They've done an industrial turnaround and back. So there is a precedent right next door that we're hoping you can implement in this development. And I would have loved to have seen it be the same zoning that we have, but I recognize that that's probably too late for that to happen because we've been here for 32 years, been an amazing situation to raise our family, run our business. And we've had other communities come and say, how did you guys do this? Can we duplicate this? Especially when COVID was forcing more lockdowns, but to bring development, help encourage small businesses. I would love to see it flipped over, but if that's not going to happen, then the main point is stopping that traffic flow. So thanks for all you do. I'm sure you have fun times and the arena is still looking great and we'll see you all again.
Thank you, Jack. Sarah Bierling. And feel free to change my pronunciation.
No, it's Beerling. I as well have the concern about the traffic, but backing onto that property, we have again, like the other development that you're talking about on Richmond, we have like a high grade up above us. Is there any way that they're going to be making sure that it's level, or are they going to put up a berm or anything like that? Like, is that going to be something that they have to do? Because right now we look out onto a field and we have a nice skyline. We can see the moon rise and all that's going to be blocked when they start developing all that. So I'm just pointing out that is, there's going to be a lot of noise, the construction that's going to be there. We're going to see all their trucks and junk and whatever. And I'm just hoping that you'll take that into consideration, that we have to live there. We have to see that all the time. Thanks.
Oh, great, Tara. Thank you for your comments. Brent Jackson.
Your worship, Brent is going to speak later on online.
Okay. Danielle Lockie. No. Trish Robertson, that was the last, that's why maybe there was that mix up, because I've got her on this one, but she spoke about the trees in the last one. And then Tori and Brandon Powell. Is that for this application? No. Okay. Vince Nickel. Michelle and Dean Worsfold.
I can speak, Your Honor, but I don't have anything to confirm.
And that's fair enough. And I think that that's appreciated in the time. Robert Howard. Nope. Okay. So that concludes, is there anybody on waiting virtually?
Yes, your worship. I'm gonna bring in Brent Jackson.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being able to accommodate us that are still virtual. My biggest concern comes around the potable water as well as the drainage. With our current property at 1083 Donnybrook backing right onto the proposed stormwater management pond. The natural flow of the land, and I've had the drainage folks out here a few years ago with respect to the natural flow of the water down through there. Our backyards in the spring and any sort of heavy rain, the fields basically naturally drain through our yards and inadvertently through our weeping tiles, and sump pumps run all year round, things like that. Is there any accommodation for changing of the grading where that stormwater pond is to maybe in hopes of preventing that from coming through all of our properties as it makes its way towards the mill pond, I would assume is where it naturally ends up eventually. And then the other thing with the additional wells and disruptions to our own drinking water here, I know I don't necessarily blame the development over south of the mill pond or boardwalk, I guess they call that. But in the last couple of years, we've actually I've been here for 20 years, and just the last 2 or 3 that we've developed, as soon as that construction started, we ended up having sulfur on our water. So now we've got sulfur removers hooked in with our water softeners and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just wondering what impact provisions, protections that are going to be to that.
Okay, Mr. Bancroft?
Yeah, thank you, your worship. So first and foremost, there can't be any adverse impacts from a drainage standpoint. So bottom line, there's going to be the need for drainage improvements, which will likely necessitate a petition under the Drainage Act to ensure that there's proper drainage treatment addressed on an individual lot by lot basis. Although the submission shows a stormwater management block, which would, as shown on the proposed plan, it backs onto your property, as I understand it. Is that right? Okay. Based on the feedback that was provided by staff, we're looking at having changes done to the plan so it eliminates that stormwater management block, but rather has stormwater dealt with on a lot by lot basis. And again, that would necessitate a petition under the Drainage Act to make sure that it's done right. So,
okay,
thank you.
So if that's changed, does that mean that that'll be another industrial block? Like, and then my concern would be more so the noise abatement and visual.
Right. So through your worship, that is correct. That would be an additional industrial block. In terms of the noise study that has been conducted, there will be the need to ensure that that gets peer reviewed, to ensure that the methodology is correct, that the findings are correct, and any need for noise abatement will have to be dealt with on a property by property basis. And on top of all this, once we have an industrial subdivision in place with a roadway with individual lots, then each individual property will be subject to site plan control or site plan approval, which basically means the need for that individual property owner, to hire a qualified individual, typically a civil engineer, and they show the layout of the property relative to grading, drainage, where the building's going to go, parking, and that sort of thing. And if there's any physical noise abatement measures required, then those would be implemented, sir, through that process. So that's all I've got to add there, Your Worship.
So
Thank you.
you're saying through site plan control on any new development, that will answer the question regarding the drainage and the noise abatement?
That will be the final process from an implementation standpoint.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Jackson?
The only other thing is, it's kind of a common theme is the traffic. Living in this 50-kilometer zone, there's a multitude of truck traffic. And the what you mentioned there earlier from the county with respect to the width of the road, that would probably be a good answer to have right now since it's all tore up.
Good point. Any comments? No. Okay. Caitlin, any comments to any of the things that we've discussed?
Through you, Your Worship, I just wanted to mention, some of the privacy concerns. There will be screening along the perimeter of the property. We will have security fencing along with a landscape buffer in order to, be sensitive to the residential uses along the western property line specifically. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Your worship, with your permission, may I address a member of the public?
Yep.
Thank you. Just one moment. Okay, would they participate or they might bring them in and would they be expecting that? Say something. No, but they're in the section that would need to speak. I think I was watching the previous and when I left, I forgot to turn off. Thanks, Rob.
All right. So.
Your worship, that concludes the online participation.
Okay, other than Jack's computer at home. All right, so council, at this time, do you have any questions regarding the discussion so far? Hearing or seeing none, then I did this with the last group too, just because not everybody has been to a planning session or a public information session before. When we make the decisions tonight, the first one will be that the information that we've gotten is received. And then that the next one is that the Director of Planning and Development Services provide a report to us. So there's no real decision of any consequence tonight. It's just the information that we've gotten from your input and go from there. So I'm going to read them out. That report number PDS 04622 dated September 19th, 2022, related to application for draft plan of subdivision for lands described as part of lots 19 and 20, concession 1, municipality of Thames Center and owned by 1045 Donnybrook Incorporated be received, and that the Director of Planning and Development Services provide a subsequent report evaluating the said application, taking into account all public and agency comments received with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. So looking for a mover, Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? So moved. Great. And now we're going to move on to applications for proposed plan of condominium 39T TCC DM 2201, official plan amendment 0222 and zoning bylaw amendment of Z 922. Which being Wes and Darlene Fox are the owner, Knudsen Development Consultants are the agent, and the address being 233 Upper Queen Street, Thorndale. So again, I'm going to ask our Director of Planning for an overview of the planning application.
Thank you, Your Worship. As outlined in my report, it's a background information brief regarding the subject proposal. I also want to clarify the fact that we did give proper notice under the Planning Act in terms of 120 meter circulation to property owners in the area and also to prescribed agencies, all under the Planning Act. So the subject property, it's 2.4 acres in size. It's located on the south side of Upper Queen Street, just east of Agnes Street in Thorndale. Property contains a single detached dwelling along with a detached accessory building, and full municipal services are available along Queen Street, Upper Queen Street, excuse me. These lands are designated residential under the official plan. So it's council's vision that we have residential growth and development happen here. And also these lands are zoned residential first density, which is an R1 category. In terms of the proposal, we've got a proposed plan of condominium to accommodate a total of 38 units to support townhouse dwellings on full municipal services. So on municipal water and sanitary sewers. It would be accessible by a private road from Upper Queen Street. There would also be 3 units that are proposed to back onto Upper Queen Street. There have been supportive studies provided in terms of planning justification, traffic impact, noise assessment, preliminary servicing, archaeological, and also a geotechnical investigation. So to allow for medium density residential uses, the applicant has applied for an official plan amendment to allow this form of housing, which is otherwise not permitted. So although the site does abut a major public park, which is one of the siting criteria, there's at least 3 other criteria that have to be met, and they fail to meet one of those 3. Also, as part of this proposal, we have a site-specific residential third density zone, an R3 category to allow townhouse dwellings, subject to a reduced front yard depth, also side yard and rear yard. In terms of agency comments received, the county engineer has indicated that there's concerns with emergency response for a long single loaded road as proposed. The owner should be required to construct all underground services outside of the traveled portion of the road so that at least 1 lane of traffic can be maintained for service repairs or reconstruction. The road should also be designed such that emergency response vehicles, including fire trucks, can maneuver in and out of the proposed condominium development. From the county emergency services, they've provided some standard conditions or comments, I should say, regarding municipal addressing. Also, the need to have the municipal fire chief ensure fire hydrants are in the proper location for firefighting purposes, and also that a permanent no exit sign be posted inside the entrance. We also have comments received from Canadian National Railway. These are standard comments, conditions of development that they're looking for, such as the need for a noise study to be conducted. Also, that a warning clause be registered on title for agreements of purchase and sale. Also, CN would like an opportunity to review the required studies. Canada Post acknowledges the need for community mailboxes. Bell Canada has noted that the developer will be required to convey any necessary easements that may be necessary. Also, from our Public Works Director, he has concerns that the proposal does not allow sufficient area for a stormwater management facility. Also, our Chief Building Official, fire route must extend to provide access to all units, indicate length of fire route, as well as indicate sign locations and turning radiuses. We've also received, from a public submission standpoint, 6 or so letters, along with a petition, and those are all attached to my report, Your Worship. So it's my recommendation that this report be received and that a subsequent report evaluating the applications, taking into account all comments received, with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alan, do we have the applicant or the agent here?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm bringing in Rick Knudsen.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Knudsen.
Good evening. I think I'm live and with you.
You're
now.
loud, you're loud and clear, so whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, and I appreciate taking the time to hear from us. We had a very active Zoom meeting back in August with a number of the residents. They essentially raised 4 issues, and as follows. They were concerned about the traffic on Upper Queen, and they were concerned about the traffic violations that are currently happening there, which is as we know, a policing issue. They're concerned about the density, which again, we talked a lot during the meeting about provincial policy and the requirements. I think, as you mentioned in an earlier session, that the province is very adamant that the 1.5 million houses be built, and they don't care where. Land use was discussed at length, and relative to that, Your Worship, 2 perimeters are adjacent to the municipal. One perimeter is adjacent, well, basically, the units are at least, and there was a lack of understanding, I think, about what a fire route was. I explained that the entire road would be designated as a fire route, and there would be no parking allowed on it. They're concerned about parking that would happen on Upper Queen. We believe that there's sufficient parking both in garages and driveways in the townhouse units with double car garages and double car driveways, so that we've got 4 cars per unit for most of the units. I believe the 3 on Upper Queen directly are single driveways. Back in January, when we had our pre-consultation meeting, sounds like forever ago, just in discussion and absolutely no commitment to any form, but townhouses were encouraged to occur. Again, it's a land use issue with adjacent uses. And we came forward on that basis. What else? There's one report that will be coming that I don't think Mr. Bancroft cited, and that's a trees report. The perimeter of this property has substantial mature trees, many of which are dead and dying, and those have been studied by Ron Cowdice, landscape architect. That study, if it hasn't been presented to you, Mark, will be very shortly. I know it's complete. Other than that, Madam Chair, I'm in your hands in terms of any questions that you and committee might have. I also understand that in the future that Alana and Mark and I will likely have 1 or more meetings to talk about this proposal. Again, I would like to respond to any people that do comment. Other than that, I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Ellen, we have, I have a list of people here that would like to speak, and it says here in person at the municipal office are Wanda and Adrienne Marks. Is that to anybody that's here? No? Okay. Do you have anybody virtually that wants to join?
Yes, Your Worship. I can bring in Urs Rubin.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Struben, whenever you're ready. Mr. Struben, is your volume bottom, it's on, okay, and you're not muted. Oh, he's got something going. Mr. Struben, can you hear us?
Mr. Struben, can you give us a thumbs up on the screen so you can confirm you can hear us?
Mr. Struben, we can't hear you, so could you call in on the number that was provided and try to enter the meeting that way? Okay, thank you. In the meantime, we'll move on if anybody else, and we'll try to come back to you if you can do that. Probably a good idea if we go.
Your worship, I'm going to move on to Richard Dugas.
Welcome. Is it Mr. Dugas?
Mr. Degas, yes, it is. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm associated with 236 Queen Street. It's where my daughter lives. I have a grandson that lives there. I guess the thing I want to say is I'm not opposed to the development of the Fox property. I just think that this is a lot for half the land. In the thing, it says 2 hectares of land for this site, for this kind of development. So for me, it's not that I'm against the development. I'm not. I just think that this much on this piece, you're talking 76 cars. And I know Rick says that people are going to park in the garages. And I've been in the construction industry for near 50 years. And I know, and I'm sure all you know, if you drive through any new development, people don't have cars in garages. They have their stuff in garages. And with the backyards and all that being restricted to smaller sizes than what they're supposed to be, where do people put their stuff? They put it in their garage. So they're not going to put their cars there. So the fallacy that everybody's going to park 2 cars in the garage is gone. And as far as the fire hat, that's narrow. And as far as because the street is posted, does he think nobody's going to park on it? I mean, let's deal with some reality. So my concerns are traffic, the parking. I mean, even for this development, they got 4 visitor parking spots. Let's put it at half a spot per unit, which would be 19 visitor parking spots. So, in the volume of traffic, now with the Fox development, Foxborough, Angus Street is like a drag strip. My grandson almost got hit last week by somebody that didn't stop for the stop sign. So we're going to add all these vehicles and all this traffic to Upper Queens, which we call the back street, with no curb, no gutter. And if you go measure that road and where are people going to park, they're going to park in the grass area, which is because of the drainage. If you go and look at it, all the stormwater, it's low, it's deep, it's soft when it's wet. So like I say, I'm not opposed to development, but I am opposed to this much on that small parcel of land. And, you know, if we can, I know Rick's going to tell us a bunch of magic and say, yeah, this is how it all works. And we got rules and that. I see three winners here, the Foxes, Rick, and the Secret Santa that's going to give us this legacy, and they're going to blow town and we're going to have to deal with it.
Okay.
But that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, next person, Alan?
Your worship, I'm bringing in LJ Wessel.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Perfect. I had some questions about what about the water and the snow? Again, it was already pointed out that our street is quite susceptible to kind of flooding, in particular right in front of my house, which is 228 Upper Queens. What are we going to do with that? Because all of that water is probably going to run away from the houses that they're going to put in. And is our storm system going to be able to maintain the water that's going to come from this hard packed ground?
That's your question?
That is a question, yes. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Anybody want to address that, Mark?
Through you, your worship. So there will be a requirement for a stormwater management plan to ensure that you know, it is handled on site and likely to be discharged to tie into an existing storm sewer along Agnes Street at the southwest corner of the property. But at the end of the day, your worship, that will be all subject to an engineering design on the part of the developer's engineer to be under review by the municipality's engineering consultant, which is a totally separate engineer, different firm. That's how it would be handled, your worship.
Thank you. Mr. Wessel, did you hear all that?
I did, yes, thank you.
Okay.
So I do have multiple questions, sorry. My other one is, what will the building height restrictions be on these? If you're putting a 2-car garage in front of a condo, that's not going to leave a lot of footprint for a main floor. So I'm assuming these are going to be looking at going up 2 to 3 stories.
Okay, anyone want to answer that?
Mr. Knudsen, could you answer the question?
Yes. Sorry, I was just going to raise hand there for a second. The units have not been designed at this point. The height in the bylaw, I believe, is 10.5 meters. And that would permit a total of 3 stories. These will have basements. And again, I don't know whether it will be a 2-story or a 3-story design.
Any other? Go ahead, Mr. Wessel.
Do we feel that that would fit into this neighborhood? Compacting, piling in all of these townhouses into a spaced out neighborhood?
We don't even have 38.
Like, again, a lot of people made a point of moving to a small town to live in a small town. I've moved here 6 years ago, and this town's done nothing but blow up and blow up. So do we really think we need to pile in more townhouses into an old subdivision? Is that suiting?
Okay, so I guess you have a question about density? Is that what you're asking?
More so, yeah. If we're classed as an R1, why are we gonna allow to change this so we can pile houses in? Yes.
If they need
Okay.
to, that should be allowed.
So, are you done? I heard somebody else talking in the background. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, we're done. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Knutson, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Thank you, Matt, your worship. The town has grown greatly. There's been a lot of pressure on municipalities, Thorndale and others, to accept a lot of growth that they probably didn't think they would be getting 20 years ago. But this has become a different time and a different day. The province is insisting on growth in all areas, villages, areas that are designed to set, defined as settlement areas, which includes Thorndale, on full municipal services. And developers are looking outside of the places like London because of the tight land squeeze and the tight land ownership that happens there. There are significant number of opportunities, not just in Thorndale's, but the Grantons in Middlesex and Middlesex Center and beyond, that are seeing similar types of applications, successfully integrating into neighborhoods. That, I think, is the biggest issue, is that how do we integrate this into the neighborhood? Part of that is through the spaces which I've identified, and the perimeters of which there is no adverse impact whatsoever. And the 50-meter separation from Upper Queen is also a significant matter in terms of integrating this into the neighborhood. Is it what there was? No. Is it what they're going to continue to be? I believe so, yes. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, just one last thing. So you say that there's a 15-meter setback, but that doesn't apply if you have 3 properties slated to back right onto the road. But I think if this is an R1, which I'm assuming are detached homes, maybe this is the place detached homes, not condominiums.
I'm not really sure. Mr. Knutson, you can attempt to address that if you wish, but I'm not really sure what the question was.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure what that question was.
My question being is R1 are classified as detached homes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if that's what we're slated for, our goal right now, well, their goal right now is to put in R3, which are all condominiums, correct?
R3 is density, doesn't necessarily condominiums, but it means townhouses or some similar, like a higher density. Yep.
Okay. At this point, I'm good for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan, do we have another person?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah. Just before we do that, though, I'll just take a motion from council to waive the 3-hour curfew. So Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter, all in favor. So moved. And moving now on to, who do we have, Alan? Oh, great. Perfect. You're ready, Mr. Strobin.
Yeah, hello?
Oh, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. It's Ernest Struben calling. I just have a couple of comments. I won't waste your time. One is the question of density. This 3-meter wide roadway servicing this project, I think, is insufficient, even though it's designated as a fire lane We know what happens. People will park there. There'll be no parking signs. I'm sure the police will come all the way from Lucan to ticket these people. And if the fire department or the ambulances come in and the roadway's blocked, I foresee some tragic incidents on the horizon. The other question I have is about snow clearance. Where are you going to pile all this snow? You only have 4 extra parking spots, which I think is not sufficient. I would like to see a difference in the footprint, that the road would be made wider to accommodate any eventuality of a emergency vehicle being able to come in. The other thing I question is, if this project does go through, I own the trailer park, which is on the west side of this project, and it right now is supporting a mature stand of hedges and trees. And I question if these will remain or if they're going to be removed. The other thing is, of course, the question of the stormwater management. Our water table is extremely high, and I can see problems with basements happening there. I think that's all I have at the moment. The other thing might be considered would be, there are no sidewalks presently on the initial plan. I wonder if sidewalks might be put into a finished development. Thanks for.
Okay, thank you. And we'll note all those considerations and include them in the report that comes back to council. Unless anybody wants to comment on that, we can move on to the next person. Oh,
Thank you,
Mr.
Your Worship. I'd like to comment.
Yep, go ahead.
Just a few things. Snow, if there's inadequate storage space, will be physically removed by truck. The stormwater management is an engineering matter, as Mr. Bancroft pointed out, and that is a design that we have to match pre-development conditions with post-development conditions. So flood storage or stormwater management has to be dealt with on site before discharge. As far as sidewalks are concerned, the a development of this size typically would not have interior sidewalks. And my experience through many, many years and many, many projects, that has been the case. Mr. Stubble mentioned that the road was 3 meters wide. The proposed road is 7.2 meters wide.
Thank
That's
you.
it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Do we have Mr. Lewis coming on, Alan?
Your worship, we have a Derek Clayhan coming in.
Okay. Do you have him on your list, Tina? Do you need a name and address? Yeah. The dog wants it.
Your worship, Derek has come over to the panelist section. However, he has not turned on his microphone.
Okay.
If there is not a connection within the next few seconds, that's the user choosing not to participate.
Okay. So we'll wait for a little bit. All right, so moving on now to any questions by council. So anybody would like to ask a question at this time? Nope. Okay, so now Tom, go ahead. A statement? Okay.
Yeah. I think that we've heard a lot of really good comments from our planner and from the public addressing deficiencies with this proposal. And if you want to get an additional density standard and you don't meet the criteria, I think you have a little bit of a ways to go in order to be getting the approval of this council. So I don't think that this is attractive as it currently stands, and I hope to see significant improvements before it comes back.
Any other comments? All right, so we have in front of us the motion that report number PDS 04822 dated September 19th, 2022, related to the application for draft plan of condominium application for official plan amendment and application for zoning bylaw amendment for the lands known municipally as 233 Upper Queen Street, Thorndale, and owned by Wes and Darlene Fox be received, and that the Director of Planning and Development Services provide a subsequent report evaluating all the said applications, taking into account all public and agency comments received with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. So looking for a mover. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? So moved. Now moving on to
Your
five.
worship.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
5.4 consent application B 1422 James Kite and Deborah Nolan, the applicant being Stuart Finlater and the address being 5051 Mar Road, and giving us an overview of the planning application, our Director of Planning and Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of the consent application is to convey a parcel of land for the disposal of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of a pending farm consolidation. And just for background, the subject property, it's a 100-acre farm situated on the south side of Gladstone Drive at Mar Road. These lands are designated agricultural and they're zoned for farming purposes as well. The applicant is proposing to convey a parcel of land having an area of 5.5 acres that would contain a single detached dwelling, along with a barn, which is to be removed, a silo, and a drive shed, as well as a tree plantation. The balance of the farm would have an area of about 95 acres, and the balance of the farm is proposed to be added to the abutting farm to the west, owned by Gladstone Dairy Inc. I've conducted my evaluation, Your Worship. So the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the Thames Centre official plan, they generally permit lot creation for this purpose, subject to criteria. I do, however, have concerns with the size of the lands being conveyed. Both provincial policy and our official plan clearly state that the lands should be kept to a minimum size to accommodate the residential use and private on-site servicing. So with the applicant proposing to retain the tree plantation, having an area of about 2.3 acres with the residential use, these lands, in my opinion, would be more appropriately retained with the balance of the farm. The plantation, it's not recognized as being a natural heritage feature, and it should remain with the farm for an opportunity for a conversion back to agriculture. If they do remain with the residential use, then their opportunity for conversion back to agriculture is essentially lost. So as such, I cannot support this application as submitted. To prohibit any new residential use on the balance of the farm, a rezoning is not required in this circumstance, considering the balance of the farm is to be merged with the abutting farm to the west, which already contains a single detached dwelling. In terms of agency comments received, there's really nothing worth mentioning except for our drainage superintendent. He's noted that a drainage reassessment will be required. And our chief building official, he has noted confirmation is required of the potable water supply and septic system. They need to be wholly contained on the lands to be conveyed. Our public works director, he's noted that Mara Road on the south side of Gladstone Drive, that right of way is actually a private access and not a municipal roadway, which provides access to the subject property only. And that was confirmed by a title search that was conducted by our municipal lawyer. He also knows any new entrance on Gladstone Drive for a field access will require an entrance permit, and that the current municipal address for the residents, it's 5051 Mar Road. That will need to be changed to a Gladstone Drive address, considering Mar Road does not legally exist south of Gladstone Drive as a municipal roadway. Once a new address has been installed, he also notes that Public Works will remove the existing signage, including the street name and stop sign at the former Mar Road and Gladstone intersection on the south side. So that's really immaterial of this consent application. It just so happens that this was brought to the forefront as a result of reviewing the subject property.
Your worship, I'm gonna stop Director Bancroft for a moment. While that is an item and we will have discussions regarding that item, it is not part of what's being decided upon here this evening. So we're just gonna move ahead with the planning matter at hand.
In terms of public comments received, we do have a letter from Carlin Joyce MP, which I believe is attached to my report. So as noted in my report, it's my recommendation that this application be deferred to allow an opportunity for the applicant to reduce the area of the lands to be conveyed based on the concerns that I've raised in my report. That's my submission, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have any additional information from the applicant or their agent.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and members of council, and thanks, Mark, for the planning report. So I just want to point out before I start that Jamie Kite and Deborah Nolan are here tonight, as is Albert Van Ginkel, who is the owner of Gladstone Dairy, who is looking to purchase the farmland and sever off the dwelling. So they may wish to speak a few words here after I give my brief presentation. Having sat at home and watched the rest of your evening, you're probably all ready to go home. So it's been a long night. The purpose of this application obviously is to sever off a surplus farm dwelling severance. Mark's explained the size and his concerns regarding, the only concern he really has is the bush lot remaining, or the plantation, effectively, because it's not a natural feature. It was planted many years ago, being retained with the residential portion that is proposed to be severed off. I spoke this afternoon with Mark Brown at the county, who's the forestry officer. And, basically the discussion I had with him was, if it was a hectare or more, it should be protected and not removed. And I think Mark's report, and I don't have any information to provide anything different, but it's almost a hectare, like 0.95, estimated at 0.95. So it's close to a hectare in area. Mr. Kite has no intentions of taking that plantation down. They've lived there for 25 years now. Owned it for 25 years, lived there before that. They've watched those trees grow up. They have put in an invisible fence for their dogs to use that area as part of the use of that residential lot. And in my opinion, the application that's before you is consistent with the PPS. It doesn't conflict with it. Mr. Bancroft indicated that the PPS says it should be kept as small as possible to accommodate the residential use and appropriate sewage. Nowhere does it say residential, it just says to accommodate the use. And to me, the use of that woodlot goes hand in hand with the residential component for the last 25 years and probably longer. Mr. Van Ginkel does not want to purchase that land. It's of no value to him. He knows that it's not going to be taken down. Who's going to take down a 2-hectare plantation and convert it back to agricultural lands? And again, that's not That's not a policy in the PPS to convert land back to agricultural land. It says keep it as small as possible for the use and the septic. And it's my professional planning opinion that this application complies with that. Like the county OP has no reference to size whatsoever. 4.5.3.4, the county plan says a consent to sever a resident surplus to a farm operation as a result of a farm consolidation may be permitted provided the resident was built prior to January 1, 1999 and provided no new residential dwelling, or provided that new residential dwellings are prohibited on the vacant remnant parcel. So again, there's no reference in there to size in the county OP. And in Thames Center's official plan, under consents for surplus farm dwelling severances, there's 15 conditions. And it's my opinion that we meet all 15. We definitely meet 14. And the one that Mr. Bancroft's pointed out, which is E, is the parcel being created is the minimum size needed to accommodate. Again, it says the use, not the residential use, the use. And the inclusion of cultivated land shall be kept to a minimum. So even if somebody was taking a bit of cultivated land, Thames Center's policy doesn't prohibit that. I mean, we all understand, and I understand, we don't want to take agricultural land out of production, right? In this case, it's not, in my opinion. And so I would ask council to approve the application as applied for. The road issue, that kind of came out of nowhere from my perspective. It shows up on maps. I talked to Mr. Kite, and he's been there for like over 25 years. The municipality has maintained it, gravelled it, graded it, and plowed it for 25 years. So whether the municipal clerk or municipal lawyer has provided an opinion that it's not a road, to me, it's very similar to the Story Drive situation that we dealt with for many, many years. And that was deemed to be a forced road, which is a road that people have used and the municipality has maintained. And as a result of that, it becomes an open public road. It's not laid out in Crown documents. It's not laid out like the rest of the concession roads or the side roads, but it's a road. It goes north of Gladstone and it goes south of Gladstone. You know, and if you've drove by there, I assume everybody went out and had a look at the property, you'll see there's a road sign, there's a stop sign, there's a no exit, both north and south. And so the road issue, again, it's important, but it's important for my clients that road, they want that road to remain open, or otherwise it's a road. Now they're gonna have to maintain that stretch of road. Mr. Kite indicated to me this afternoon that when they moved in there, the municipality, was it me? Maybe it was, made them put the municipal address sign at their laneway and gave them the address of 5051 Mar Road. So there's some confusion with that. Again, it's a bit of a side issue, but it's important to my clients that we'd like to see that road continue to be maintained by the municipality. And if that's all I have to say, Your Worship, if it's okay, is it okay if we ask if they have anything they want to add that I may not have covered? So.
Okay, the road thing, we kind of will have to deal with that one on a different section because that can take a little bit more work.
Okay.
But does the applicants have anything to add to Mr. Finlater's report, whether it be Mr. Van Ginkel or Mr. Kite? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. So now we're moving on to questions in the public, and I know that we have Carl and Joyce, did you? Okay, so the questions are all answered.
You're not gonna answer anyway with the road thing.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, and that, got it. Okay,
As for the plantation, I do want to see them keep that.
yeah,
Because it's beautiful and it's a part of them. They definitely, they.
okay. So I think the road, yeah.
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 Together with the road.
So the road thing, we'll discuss at a later date, but you're good with what, you have no other comments? Perfect. All right, so moving on. And I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor Elliott to take the chair because as Councillor Patterson likes to point out, I'm not to have opinion, but unless I'm not in the chair. But here we are again with the balance between farmland and existing properties. And we've seen this before on Crampton. We've seen it before, I believe, on Whiten. We've seen it before in other places where there are large natural features that, although were sowed many years ago or planted many years ago by the residents, they still exist. And we're not taking away valuable farmland by leaving those in existence. So, you know, as I said, the planner is not allowed to deviate from his path. So he doesn't really have a lot of opportunity to say, you know, it's okay. But as council, our job is to look at things with local knowledge and common sense, and to say that, you know, this is one of those exceptions that we see in one of 300 applications. And I know that anybody who has a farming background would not appreciate trying to take out that plantation of trees and making it tillable soil. And we've seen that before. So therefore, I would be happy with the conditions proposed, using that plantation as part of that severance. And I'm hoping that council would also see that way too. So I am going to let the chair get me again, and then I'll take comments. And the first comment I'll take is Deputy Mayor Elliott and then Councillor Heeman.
Thank you. And through your worship, I'm just going to echo your comments and the fact that I do support the trees staying on this property. I respect where our director of planning is coming from in terms of by the book. He's absolutely right. Technically, the woodlot can be converted back under provincial policies to agricultural land, but from a practical standpoint, that's never going to happen. And so I think that's something that we have to consider. And as Mayor Warwick pointed out, we've done it in the past before. We did it with another application not too long ago off of Whiten, keeping trees with the property instead of with the farmland. And so there is precedence for council to do this. And so I would as well support keeping the application as it stands.
Worship, I just wanted to mention for the public that as a courtesy, I provided conditions of consent for council's consideration if they were in a position to approve the consent as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Heeman.
I think earlier we heard about somebody advocating for the trees. And although we may not have had much influence in that matter, I think this is something where we can exercise some. And as the mayor mentioned previously, we're losing our forest cover, and I think we lose it 1 acre at a time. So this is an instance where we can prevent that.
And I was glad to hear that there was consultation with the county forestry person, because that is what his job is to look at individual applications and assess them. So kindly, Director Bancroft has submitted conditions to facilitate the disposal of resident surplus to a farming operation and not a deferral. So we can look at these conditions and I can read them. I'm not sure if the clerk has the conditions already. Okay, but I'll read them through, and then that way the applicants and everybody can hear. The applicant for consent B1422 to facilitate this disposal of a resident surplus to a farming operation with the lands to be conveyed having an area of approximately 2.25 hectares and requested by James Kite and Deborah Nolan for lands legally described as part of Lot 6, Concession 5, as 5051 Mar Road be approved subject to the following conditions: that the certificate of consent under section 5342 of the Planning Act be given within 2 years of the date and the notice of the decision, that the lands be conveyed, be merged into the same name and title as the adjacent farm to the west of the satisfaction of the municipality to ensure farm consolidation, and that subsection 53(3) or 5 of the Planning Act apply to any subsequent conveyances involving the enlarged parcel, that any mortgages that may be required take into account the parcel as enlarged, that the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of a revised assessment schedule in accordance with the Drainage Act, as amended, with such cost to be paid in full to the appropriate engineering firm to the satisfaction of the drainage superintendent, that all applicable property taxes be paid to the municipality, that all outstanding work orders or bylaw enforcement issues be resolved to the satisfaction of the CBO, that the applicant be required to satisfy all requirements with respect to the on-site private sanitary waste disposal system and the potable water supply on the lands to be conveyed to the satisfaction of the CBO, that the applicant be required to remove the barn and silo on the lands to be conveyed to the satisfaction of the CBO, and that the necessary deeds, transfers, and charges for certificates and instruments necessary for registration be submitted electronically prior to certification, all which are to be fully executed, and that an electronic version of a deposited reference plan be submitted to legally describe the lands affected in general conformity with this decision, all to the satisfaction of the municipality. That's it. That's all I wrote. No, I didn't write that. I just want you to know that. So, okay, so mover, Counselor Heeman, seconded by Counselor Hunter, all in favor? So moved. Thank you. You're welcome. And we'll get the road thing sorted out.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Yeah. All right, moving on to consent application B15. I think your name is listed, right? Okay, thanks, Joyce. Yep, bye now. Consent application B1522, Helen Wilson and Paul Francis, applicant Helen Wilson, agent 21878 Missouri Road, Thorndale. And the overview of the planning application we're giving to our Director of Planning and Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this proposal deals with a request to create a residential building lot. The subject property, it's 0.3 of an acre in size. It's located on the east side of Missouri Road and north of Elliott Trail in the village of Thorndale. The owner's proposing to convey a vacant parcel, having an area of 0.14 acres or 585 square meters to allow the creation of a residential building lot. The lands to be retained, they contain an existing dwelling and a detached garage, and they would have an area of 0.16 acres or 652 square meters. These lands are designated residential under the official plan and they're zoned residential first density R1. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and certainly there's policy direction from the provincial level and the county level, as well as locally, to encourage this form of development on full municipal services. And certainly that's what's being demonstrated here. Also, there's criteria in the official plan dealing with consents, and I'm satisfied that those the criteria has been met, if not through conditions of consent. I also noted in my report that with the lands being zoned R1, they are deficient from a lot area standpoint. The requirement is 700 square meters minimum, and we've got lands to be conveyed and retained respectively 585 square meters and 652 square meters. So as a condition of consent, an approved variance would be required. But in all, I'm satisfied that this proposal is consistent with provincial policy and the official plans having effect. In terms of agency comments, county engineer has noted the need for a widening dedication 18 meters from center line of construction of County Road 27 if the right of way is not already to that width. From our Director of Public Works, he's noted the need for the installation of a water connection and a sanitary sewer connection for the proposed vacant lot. In terms of public comments, none were received as of the date of the preparation of my report. It's my recommendation that this consent be approved, subject to the 10 conditions that are noted in my report, and also for the reasons outlined in my report. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have the applicant or the agent here? Great. I bet you're glad it's your turn now. Did you want to make any additional comments? Great. Okay. You're my kind of woman. All right. So any questions from the public? Alan?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? No, okay, we have a decision on and a recommendation with 10 conditions. So looking for a mover, Counselor Heeman, seconded by Counselor Hunter, all in favor. So be. Thank you. Thanks for being so patient. All right, moving on to 5.6 zoning bylaw amendment application Z 1522. Howard Wakeham and Teresa Marie Wakeham applicant 17585 Gregory Drive, Wellburn. And Mr. Bancroft, it's all
Thank you, Your
yours.
Worship. So this is an application for rezoning to allow for an additional residential unit or ARU within the existing dwelling, which is otherwise not permitted under the current zoning. This property is 0.7 acres in size. It's a residential lot located in Wellburn, south side of Gregory Drive, west of Wellburn Road. It contains a single detached dwelling on private services. The applicant is proposing a 681 square foot addition on the south side of the existing dwelling and a conversion of the existing garage to accommodate an additional residential unit with a total floor area of 1,143 square meters. Sorry, square feet. I was going to say that's massive. Yeah. The main dwelling unit would have a floor area of 1,500 square feet. So 1,500 for the main dwelling unit and 1,143 for the additional unit. So if approved, this would allow two separate dwelling units within the existing dwelling as enlarged. So these lands are designated hamlet and they're also zoned hamlet residential. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and going through the evaluation criteria into the official plan. The criteria has been met or it's capable of being met at building permit stage. And also there's policy direction to encourage additional residential units under the provincial policy statement and echoed through the County of Middlesex official plan in terms of alternative forms of housing. In terms of agency comments, no concerns raised. Public comments, no responses received. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that this rezoning be approved in principle, and I'd be directed to prepare the necessary amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant or the agent here?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. So no additional information is required. Any questions from the public? Any public council, any questions? No, all right. So looking for a decision, knowing that we have the motion already read. Councillor Hunter? So moved, seconded. Councillor Heeman, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Moving on to 5.7 zoning bylaw amendment application Z16, which is New Life Properties. The applicant being Jamie Martell and the address being 6868 Hamilton Road. Mark?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a rezoning application to rezone the subject lands from the agricultural zone to an extractive industrial zone to recognize the existing use of the lands being aggregate extraction activities related to an adjacent licensed gravel pit. This property is on the north side of Hamilton Road and west of Putnam. And the subject lands, they have an area of 4 acres and they're adjacent to a larger property having an area of about 69 acres, which contains a licensed gravel pit. The applicant is seeking this rezoning approval in order to legitimize the current use of the land, which is basically used as part of the adjacent gravel pit, but the zoning, for some reason, the zone agricultural. Upon further review, that adjacent gravel pit is actually zoned M3-3, which also permits an asphalt plant. And it would be appropriate, Your Worship, if this rezoning was amended to reflect the M3-3 zoning as opposed to rezoning to M3 as noted in the notice of public meeting. So considering that there's no physical development proposed, but to legitimize existing site conditions, it is suggested also that no further notice be required for this change of, having the change go from M3 to M3-3. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship. Both the PPS and the county OP, they both generally permit aggregate extraction and related activities in private agricultural areas. And also, under the Thames Center official plan, this proposal is not offended by that policy direction that's offered by the plan. Also, I'm satisfied that the evaluation criteria used to evaluate a zoning bylaw amendment has been met. And also, it should be noted that there's no requirement for an additional reference plan to legally describe these lands to be rezoned, since we already have a valid legal description for those lands. There were no issues identified in the circulation of the application to both agencies and the public. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that this application for zoning bylaw amendment, that the lands be rezoned to an M3-3 category, and that the implementing bylaw be forwarded to the next regular meeting of council, and also that no further notice be required. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have the applicant, any additional information needed?
Your worship, we have no further members online. It's only in the room right now.
Okay, any public questions? Nope. Council, any questions? Okay, then we have a motion in front of us. Councillor Hunter, so moved, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? So moved. Moving on to 5.9, zoning bylaw amendment application Z 1922. The applicant being Jason Van Rydeboek and Jessica Howe. Oh, did I miss one? Oh, Steve, sorry. All right, I'll start again. Sorry about that. 5 point, it was just wishful thinking, I think. 5.8, zoning bylaw amendment applications at 1822. Steve and Yvette Stapleton, the applicant, north end of Missouri Road on the west side of the same. And Mark, you're on.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a rezoning application to rezone a portion of the property from the EP zone to a site-specific rural residential zone, subject to special provisions to allow the residential development of the lands. So as a whole, this property, it's 14 acres in size. It's vacant, and it's on the west side of Missouri Road, and it backs onto the Thames River. These lands contain a natural heritage feature in the form of significant woodlands, and these lands are partly designated rural residential and protection area to a larger extent. Although my report says that these lands are zoned rural residential, that is not the case. They are zoned environmental protection EP, as well as being regulated by the Conservation Authority. So the applicant is seeking a rezoning for a portion of the property, about 3/4 of an acre in size, which is designated rural residential, from the EP zone to that site-specific rural residential zone. It would also be subject to requested special provisions dealing with front yard depth, rear yard depth, accessory building maximum height, and those are all specified in my report, Your Worship. The applicant also provided a planning justification report and an environmental impact study. As noted in my analysis, these lands are designated as agricultural areas under the county official plan. However, it's not the intent of the county plan to prevent the development of areas designated for non-farming purposes in local OPs, considering that these lands are partly designated rural residential. So considering areas designated rural residential are a legacy designation, this does not offend the provincial policy statement. So as noted, the applicants retained MTE consultants to conduct an environmental impact study, which has not been reviewed by the UTRCA. I've gone through the evaluation criteria, Your Worship, and dealing with zoning bylaw amendments, and that evaluation criteria is found in the official plan. The last criteria that I'm having issues with is that adequate measures will be taken to alleviate or prevent any adverse effects that the proposed use may have adjacent to existing natural heritage features. And the municipality, we rely on the UTRCA to undertake technical study reviews in dealing with natural hazards and natural heritage features. And as noted in the agency section, studies and reports are required by the UTRCA. However, there's additional information that needs to be provided by the applicant to address those concerns by Upper Thames. I'm jumping ahead here, so I'm getting into the agency comments section of my report. In terms of agency comments from Upper Thames, they've got concerns. They're actually recommending that the application be refused due to the lack of policy and technical support. Then they mentioned, should council decide to defer this application, that the following assessments should be required: planning justification report, EIS, flood modeling information prepared by Stantec, and a geotechnical assessment. There were no comments received by the public. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that the application be deferred until the applicant has addressed the concerns raised by Upper Thames, and that I be directed to prepare a subsequent report once the required studies and reports have been reviewed and approved by the UTRCA. I should also point out, Your Worship, that this information was shared with the applicant in advance, to which he indicated no concern with staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, so I thank you, Mark, and I'm going to let the applicant take over from here.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have an issue with the deferral. But I do want to talk about it a little bit because there might be some semantics that need to be dealt with the approval from Upper Thames. And I think the committee is familiar that I am the owner of where I live is just directly south of this property. And we just went through an exercise with Upper Thames that lasted more than 6 months to deal with our lands or my addition. Hence this rezoning, because we are designated rural residential. There's no immediate plans to build a house here. It's to deal with the issues that we just lived in the last 6 months. Quite disappointed with the Upper Thames and their response to this, because we just lived the process. We did review their new modeling and highlighted the errors in the modeling. The comments received on this does not recognize that. However, their mapping they provided articulates a floodplain very similar to our rezoning line, which is interesting. So we have no issue working with the Upper Thames to give them time to review our EIS. I don't believe I need their approval on a rezoning to have geotechnical, and that's a Section 28 process for septics and things of that nature. So I have no issue in deferring pending their review of the EIS, and that would be the slight change I would ask on the motion. We have provided the modeling that we did for our addition as part of this application that shows obviously that there is an area that we can build a house on. Hence the special provisions. What we tried to do with the special provisions is, because you see that triangle area, is to pull the house closer to the road and allow it to be kind of in the opening of the trees that's been created, because we lost a number of trees there, ash borer, hickory beetle, all this stuff. So there is a space there to build a house without too much issue. The floodplain is not an issue. We'll just resubmit that again to them and have them review it, and hopefully it won't take another 6 months with the same consultants that provided the first one, which I can say at some expense and time. So, I'm going to try to stay calm on it, but it was quite an ordeal, and my wife couldn't come tonight. Nor I don't know if I'd put her through this, but anyway, so the issue is we're happy to facilitate the discussion on the EIS, because that would be the only outstanding matter in my mind. I have no problem providing the additional studies as part of it, or at least an augmenting of what we've already done to clarify it, so that someone has something they can rely on in changing their position like they did last time. So we can do that. I don't I would like the motion to be amendment not to include their approval because it's not necessary on rezoning. They can provide you comments and you guys can decide depending on what occurs there. I would like the application to be received and then the report not come back until that information has been provided to Upper Thames and some time has passed for their review. I have no issue with that, but technically the application needs to be received so that we can deal with that issue and have, no, I'm not saying leverage or anything, but at least not be flapping in the wind as we were the last 6 months on our house. So these are the concerns I raise and I think we can still work with the Upper Thames. It's just I got to do it all again. So that's where we are. And I hope council will see that the genuine desire to work with people. I hope that you will make that amendment so that we can just get on with this and get it concluded without being leveraged through the process. Thank you.
And I think that's exactly the reasons that you stated are exactly why we're seeing the Ministry of Natural Resources coming down on these conservation authorities and saying, you've got to get this information out.
Yeah, there's no urgency at all. And we've had other applications, they never even commented on. In Ingersoll, our golf course, the same thing. No comment.
Yeah.
If you waited for them, it's still doing it, right? Like,
Yeah. No, and I think that, and you don't want to tar all CAs in the same brush.
You know, and I don't
And
want this motion coming back to honest vote.
No, that's right. Yeah. All right. So that's the information from the applicant and the agent. Any questions? Do we have public questions? Okay. Council. Yep. Deputy Mayor Elliott.
So my only question would be to flip that back to the Director of Planning, the concerns that Mr. Stapleton raised, and if that's sufficient to him.
Yeah, through you, your worship. I don't have any concerns with Mr. Stapleton's request. I do have some wording for council's consideration. That the application be deferred until an environmental impact study has been provided and reviewed to the satisfaction of the municipality. And then that the Director of Planning and Development Services be directed to prepare a subsequent report. You know, once the EIS has been reviewed and accepted by the municipality, something along those lines. But I'm fine with that approach.
And I'm happy with that.
Well, pending there's no other questions, I would move that motion from our Director of Planning.
All right, now the actual 5.9 zoning bylaw amendment application, Z 1922, the applicant being Jason Van Ruybuck and Jessica Howe, the address being 20177 Purple Hill Road.
Thank you, your worship. So yeah, this is a rezoning application to rezone a portion of the subject lands from extractive industrial M3 to a site-specific agricultural zone, to recognize the existing use of the lands with a reduced area of approximately 1.6 hectares compared to the existing standard of 40 hectares. This property, it's 90 acres in size, and it's situated on the west side of Purple Hill Road, north of Dundas Street, near the CP Railway. These lands contain a licensed active gravel pit, and buildings and structures on this property are limited to a single detached dwelling and a detached garage. located along Purple Hill Road. These lands are designated and zoned for extractive industrial purposes. The applicant's agent intends to purchase the property, remove the existing dwelling with the construction of a new dwelling in the same general location, more or less. This rezoning is being requested considering the existing zoning does not allow for a single detached dwelling. The existing dwelling predates the existing zoning and has grandfathered or legal non-conforming status. I've connected my analysis and there's nothing offended by the provincial policy statement or the County of Middlesex official plan, considering there's no net increase from a residential standpoint in that we have an existing dwelling to be replaced with a new dwelling. Also, I've connected my analysis dealing with zoning bylaw amendment requests, and I'm satisfied that most of the criteria has been met. Some of the criteria is capable of being addressed at building permit stage. I do have one concern, however, dealing with the one criterion. Adequate measures will be taken to alleviate or prevent any adverse effects the proposed use may possibly have upon an adjacent use. So it just so happens that there's still an existing license for aggregate extraction on that property. And I've been advised that the license will be surrendered towards the end of this year. So I don't feel comfortable in approving the zoning until the license is surrendered. And the ministry, I contacted MNRF and they did confirm that indeed the license still applies and that the residential use, although it's not located, of course, in the extraction area, it's located oddly enough in the licensed area. So once the license is surrendered, it would be appropriate for a council to approve the rezoning request. I should also point out that this site of the new dwelling, it's at least 300 meters away from the neighboring railway line, which brings me to agency comments from CP Rail. They're asking for a warning clause to be inserted in all agreements of purchase and sale, a bit onerous in my opinion, considering they're at least 300 meters away. In terms of public comments, we have a letter of support, I believe, which is appended to my report from Thames Valley Aggregate, owner of land on the opposite side of Purple Hill Road. They support this request for a change in zoning. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that the rezoning be approved in principle and that the implementing bylaw be forwarded to the next regular meeting of council. Once we have confirmation from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry that the gravel pit license has been surrendered, and once a deposited legal description has been provided to describe the lands affected. That's my sufficient this evening, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alan, do we have an agent or applicant on anywhere?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the public? No, it's
Your
not
Worship.
Brenda. Brenda's just waiting for her deck.
I should also point out, Your Worship, that I did speak with Jessica this afternoon, Miss Howe this afternoon, and she does not have any concerns with staff's recommendation.
You, council, any questions? Well, we have a motion in front of us. Moved by Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Okay, now that I'm going to ask the public meeting adjourn at this time, which is 8:51, and convene as a committee of adjustment. Mover, Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? So moved. Brenda, you win the award for the most patient person. There you go. And make the best of it. So 6.1, we have the minor variance application A822, Brenda Schran's applicant, 615 Moonlight Way. So an overview of the planning application, please.
Thank you, your worship. So this is a variance request to allow the construction of a deck, which is exceeds the minimum side yard width requirement, which is otherwise not permitted. So for background, this is a 1 acre residential industrial lot located in the Silver Moon subdivision. It contains a building which is used for a tow truck business, which also includes an accessory dwelling unit. So the applicant is proposing to construct a deck which would extend 3.7 meters into the west side of the building, which would encroach into the existing side yard, which is otherwise not allowed. The building has a current side yard of at least 10 meters. These lands are designated rural industrial special policy 1, and they're zoned residential industrial RM. I've conducted my analysis, your worship, and I'm satisfied that the 4 tests of the Planning Act have been met. In terms of agency comments and comments from the public, there's no concerns raised. So it's my recommendation that this application be approved, subject to the reasons outlined in my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, any information to add? Okay. Anybody from the public here, Alan, for this?
No, your worship.
Committee, any questions, concerns? Seeing none, we have a motion in front of us then. So looking for a mover, Councillor Hunter, second by Councillor Heeman, all in favor, so moved. You can build your deck. You can start tonight if you want. I would think that would be your next step. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Okay, so now I need a motion that the Committee of Adjustment adjourn and convene as a court of revision under the Drainage Act. Come on, going into drainage now. Who wants to go first? Okay, we gotta have a motion for that though. Okay, Councillor Heeman, Deputy Mayor Elliott, all in favor? Well, sorry to keep you up past your bedtime there, Travis. But now we're going into the court of revision for the Crampton drain. So, order of appeals. Do you bring the report forward? Because I'm not really sure what I'm reading here.
I can, your worship. So typically we would ask if there was any appeals to the assessment that was laid out under the engineer's report, which we have no written appeals. At this point, it should be asked if there is anyone in attendance that may have appeals.
I don't believe so. As in no.
Okay, your worship, then it would be my recommendation that council would accept the report as outlined in the Crampton Drain 2022 report presented by Spreed Associates.
Court of revision, your wishes. Councillor Heeman, you're moving, seconded by Councillor Hunter. So the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Crampton Drain 2022 with no appeals being submitted, adopt the drainage assessment schedule dated July 22nd, 2022 as submitted by Spreed Associates Limited. So moved, or all in favor? So moved. So now adjournment of the counter revision. So mover, Deputy Mayor Elliott, Councillor Heeman, all in favor? So moved. That was goodbye to Travis. He left again. Now moving on to the consent agenda. Items listed on consent agenda are considered routine and the minutes. So the minutes first, right? Do you want to do them separately? Okay, let's do that. The minutes of the regular meeting of council held on September 12th, 22 be approved as circulated, and that consent agenda item 8.2 be received as information. And I think that's it. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Hunter, all in favor? So moved. And now moving on to the reports. Oh, poor Kim. 9.1, F1122, tax adjustments pursuant to section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act 2001. So it's all yours, Kim.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. This report identifies applications that we've received in 2022 to date in regards to section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act. These applications request reductions in assessment for reasons that are outlined on the attachment to the report. As information, council will see these reports being brought forward on a more regular basis, as these types of applications may not be delegated to staff and must be considered by council. Staff are in agreement with the impact recommendations that are included on the attachment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
So any questions regarding this report? Hearing and seeing none, then we have a motion that report F1122 regarding tax adjustments made under sections 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act 2001 received for information, and that taxes amounting to $12,212.55 be written off pursuant to the provisions of section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act 2001. Mover? Counselor Hunter, second by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Moved. And now 9.2 PDS 05622, request to amend condition of consent B2421, which would be Payline Farms by Jamie Payton, 24063 Heritage Road. Is yours?
Yes, it is, Your Worship. So the applicant's requesting that condition 6, as noted in the conditions of consent for application for consent B24-21, that they be amended by council to permit the applicant to retain the accessory building located in the lands to be conveyed, as opposed to removing it as it currently is noted in the conditions. So I've connected my analysis, Your Worship, and bottom line, staff doesn't have any concerns with the request, other than the applicant should be required to install a door access on the opposite side of the building, so that it'd be accessible without encroaching onto the neighboring lands, and also the need for a minor variance approval, because you can't have an accessory building in the front yard. But it's something that staff does not have any concerns with. So we've got wording in the recommendation in terms of replacement language for condition 6. We also are recommending that we add an additional condition. There's a grain bin on the lands to be conveyed, which should have been included as a requirement, and also that no further notice be required. This information has been shared with the applicant, and he doesn't have any concerns with this moving forward. Thank you.
Any questions, council? Nope. Then we have the recommendation in front of us. Councilor Heeman, Deputy Mayor Elliott, second. All in favor? Okay, any unfinished business? Nope. Notice of motion. New business. I'm going to turn the page. Bylaws. We do have a bylaw that 83/2022 be adopted as presented, moved by Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor or Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? And now next meeting being Monday, October 3rd at 1 p.m. And now I'm looking for at 9 p.m. exactly a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? So moved. Thank you.